Okay, here we go. It's episode 82 of Height Drop. And this one is with the Parkour Journal, at the Parkour Journal. His name is Aljaafreh. I hopefully said that right. Aljaafreh. I don't actually know how to pronounce it, and I didn't ask. However, we had a great conversation. This one's super good for the nerds, the geeks of parkour. This is a real parkour-heavy discussion. And if you are listening to this podcast, that's probably fine. But if you want to geek out in parkour, just know that's what's going to happen here. We talk a lot about cat drops, descents, parkour history, our favorite athletes, how they contributed to our training, the mentality of what it means to contribute to the culture and U.S. culture we talk about, and we go into our own stories and how that's kind of informed how and why we trained and what meaning that's got and what kind of growth that's got. And we talk a lot about spirituality at one point and how that's played into our lives. And he's been pretty forthright on Instagram, at least, and in his life, I'm sure, about his faith and what that means to him and where that plays into his training and how it played into him doing certain big cat drops, which he's very much one of the main players in right now. He does a lot of cat drops or descents. We talk about that and the difference between those terms quite a bit. And, from Texas, and he founded Spyglass Pk with Jared Luddy, who we'll hopefully have on as well one day, hopefully soon. And yeah, we get into just our own stories and the histories of our own things. He had a lot of questions for me. We were both getting to know each other a lot on this podcast, so hopefully you guys are into that. I'm sure I'm going to repeat myself, but I also told a little bit of, we got some vulnerableness coming from both of us on what kind of history we've had and what's informed us and the trauma he had in his childhood and the trauma I had in mine and certain things like that. So hopefully you guys are inspired by this one, and you can get it at us with any questions. Unfortunately, I posted to Instagram with a prompt to ask fan questions, and then I fucking got so involved in this conversation that I forgot to ask them. So for all you guys that posted them, I'm going to try to get AJ back on just for a quick video on just the fan questions. And we'll release that at a later date of just the fan questions. But for this episode, it might just come out without any of that. So sorry for being derelict on that bitch, because I needed to remember next time. This is the first time I've asked for fan questions in a minute. So that's an excuse, and that's a bunch of bullshit. That's what that was. Anyhow, I hope you guys dig this one. Again, really big thanks to AJ. We had a really, really deep conversation at times, and I think it's one of the better episodes we've done in a while. So it was really fun talking to this guy, and can't wait to meet him again in person here. Here you go. Yeah, perfect. Now I can relax because I know that we're recording. Okay.
Man, anything you want to ask, I'm definitely going to ask you questions.
Okay. It's the double interview. I mean, well, that's like the whole idea here is I'm trying to have conversations anyhow. I don't, Kira asked me last night, she's like something about interviewing. And I was like, I don't really want to interview people. I mean, I just want to get to know you. You seem like an interesting person. I've been following your story, and it sounds like you really have certain things that you have to say, and like you have a unique message that you're putting out. So I appreciate anyone that's kind of bringing a viewpoint that's themselves. It seems authentic and it seems like it's original, and that's the most important thing.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I like the conversation aspect too. I think it'll be better than like interview question because I want to get to know you, man. I really do. I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time. I was telling Jared Luddy?
Yeah. These guys are the Spyglass Pk co-founders, right? Is there anyone else involved with that brand, or is it just you two?
It's just us two.
Not that there's anything just about it. I mean, those are two powerful players. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, we're trying. It's me and him were talking about coming to Denver and getting on your podcast for a while, and then all this stuff happened. We were supposed to be in Denver probably this month, and then COVID 2019 2020 happening. So apparently,
yeah. Well, it would have been great to see you. Yeah, I would like to get him on here as well one day, and hopefully both you guys in person, at some point, if you come back out to Denver.
The full experience.
The full experience. You know, we'll get you in the studio here. Huh?
I said train with the B Dougie and get on the podcast.
I mean, yeah, man, I get to train with you guys. That's the real treat, I think, because you know, you guys are pushing the game really, really well these days. It seems like both of you.
Thanks,
and yeah, you're both really fun to watch and innovative. And I don't know, I guess, you know, that might be a fun place to start. Is how did that come about? You know, with Spyglass. Do you guys? How do you even know each other?
So I met Jared. It's crazy, man. Me and him were in Houston at the same time. He had been training for like 5 years. I've been training for like 8. We never met each other. And like, Houston's not that big. And then Instagram happened and we were like, dude, what, you train and I train? And it was actually a pretty funny story. We were on our way to Dallas to train with, I don't know if you know DeAndre Jones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that many of, like, that's another great thing about this is I get to know people. So, but yeah, I know of him.
Cool. Yeah, he's great. We were on our way to train with him and he was having a little comp at his gym. He owns a gym out there called Somatic. And we were on the way and Jared is just this really good athlete, like an all-arounder. You know, if he wants to hit a descent, he'll hit a descent. If he wants to do acro, if he wants to hit a mad concrete, whatever. And I'm like, bro, you need to be filming your videos better. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, get out the car. Like, let's get out the car. And we just stop in the middle of the highway. And I was like, what can you do on your car? Like, give me something. And so he does a cast back. And I catch like the right angle of it. Less than like an hour later, it's reposted on Shift Community and like 3 other pages. And it's a really low cast back. And he was like, oh. And so that was the beginning of him realizing like, I'm good enough. Now I need to market myself better. And right after that, his page just kind of started spiraling.
Wow.
He's like, I mean, and he works hard too. He's like me. I wouldn't necessarily call myself like a talented athlete. Like I look at him and I'm like, whoa, like he'll learn something so fast. I'm like that. I have to work really, 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 really hard to get somewhat good at something specific.
We know that. Yeah. You know, we all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. And yeah, for sure. I mean,
so you competed back in the day too,
back
right?
in the day.
Like,
yeah.
What did you compete in?
I was in, well, the competitions have changed a little bit, but I was in NAPC, the originals.
Oh,
NAPC
sick.
1, NAPC 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think, was the ones I was in. And then
Nice.
Tempest Games was another one that I did back in the day. That was like in 2013. And that was like
Nice.
something that I think they were trying to produce into a bigger event or some kind of show. And they were kind of doing it as a pilot. And it was a really big, really well done production, but it didn't really ever get published anywhere. And then before that, I was doing like, and also there's obviously the comps in Colorado. You know, there's an international or invitational, or before that, it was just called like Nat Jam. I don't know. I got involved in the community probably, or not probably, but in 2010. So before that, it had some earlier iterations, and then.
Wow, that's crazy, dude.
And so
2010,
baby. When did you start training?
2010.
2010.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. How old were you?
I was 21. So I was like already kind of moving into my adult journey in some ways.
Okay.
And that's like why I think I've had sort of a unique path in parkour, because I was still kind of in between generations, you know? There was like the earliest generations and like kind of the people that were big players and their students beneath the Yamakasi, and people like Stefan Vigouroux. I can't pronounce his name very well. Stefan Vigouroux. But like people from like France and Britain before it had really even rooted that well in the United States. Although there were some, you know, some original key players obviously in Colorado and in the DC and in Seattle. I think were the first like 3.
Okay.
I don't, you know, I'm not a complete history buff on it, but
Neither am I.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really, I'm fascinated with it though. I mean, I love parkour history. I love that, you know, parkour is like just continuing to expand. And that's one of the reasons, you know, I'm so excited to see where we're going with this and why I want to talk to people like you, because we're all kind of participating in that conversation and creating and pointing it in a different direction, and everyone's pointing it in a slightly and expanding the boundaries of what it means to be someone that's in this community.
Yeah, it's weird, man. Something that really clicked in my head last year was for the U.S. community specifically. We're still in like a forging phase. Mm-hmm. So it really is like like exactly what you said. It's about creating and not so much about. It'd be awesome to get a sponsorship. It'd be great for like Nike to roll in and be like, you're sponsored and like salary and all this stuff. But I think what clicked in my head was just like, we're not there yet. And so I think our generation, something that's important for us to do is almost kind of like Valley Uprising. Have you seen that documentary?
Yeah. Beautiful, amazing documentary.
Right? We're there. We're there with parkour right now. Whatever we're creating and whatever we're making will set the standard for the history of parkour in the next 30 years here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So it's fun. It calmed me down a little bit more because it made me realize like, okay, so I can like just make a project and put it out there. Mm-hmm. And if it's liked enough, it'll stick. And if it doesn't, it's cool whenever the only people that you're trying to expand the horizon on is the community and people that are looking into the community and not so much like big brands and stuff like that yet. So there's actually something really special about it.
Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
Not so much you can't make a living on it, but in the aspect of creation, it's really cool. We all got a chance,
Yeah, no, I think that I love that. And I love that there's kind of like there's certain eras in each athlete, each person's life, really. Like I look at parkour athletes, I try to look at them as just people, and I try to relate parkour always to like, what does it mean to be a human being more than I try to, because I think it's fascinating because of the way that it came about and just like its place in history. I just like to look at it in the broadest context I can. Yeah. And what I was saying, I guess, was just that they have different eras, and like the era that you're kind of in where you really get to contribute to the culture in that way without any attachment to making a living at it. Like that's still kind of happening, but we're definitely making a transition where it's like some things, like you're saying, are gonna start rooting down and starting to give this thing called parkour more structure. Yeah, and that'll provide opportunity, but you lose a little bit of flexibility and creativity, or you don't actually. You could always do what you want. And that's one of the beautiful things. It's like, that's really where it's always going to be at. The edge is always kind of like where people are kind of going, nah, but we're doing this. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, that's where parkour lives. That's where anything kind of lives, is on that edge of just expanding the boundary, I think.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. Yeah. It's crazy to think that at one point the boundary was like QMs and rail walking. Oh, yeah. And now it's like, wow. Like a big, and I know you guys are great friends. Nick Ortiz, he was a huge inspiration for me. Like whenever I not first started, it was really like 2 years ago. Whenever I found his Instagram, and I was like, bro, this guy is like. It's funny because I could tell that it seems like he had learned a lot from you and Dylan, and he would mention that in captions a lot. And I that's so crazy. Like, and something that he did was like he started, or to me, like from seeing it, he started like this trend of height training. Online, and it was like very careful, and it made me realize like, oh, you could actually go out and do that carefully and committedly and not be reckless. And the way that he would type the captions was like, he was one of the first people that I was like, wow, he's just forging that. Like nobody's doing that right now, and he's just like uploading daily videos of him being like, this is how I worked out this really tall descent or really big jump. And I was like, he can just do that? Like, and it was beautiful though. It was beautiful. It made me want to go out and do that too. For sure. It's so great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I credit Dylan with a lot of my growth too. I look at sometimes the way that parkour is taught is very broad, but I look at in some ways it's kind of like this. I mean, I'm like maybe a huge nerd, but I look at it kind of like Star Wars, kind of like Jedi people. They're like, there's like certain figures. They're like, there's certain masters. And like for a huge chunk of my life, like Dylan was like my master, like I was studying under him, and for someone like Nick to get inspired or training or feeling like he's getting that same benefit that I got from Dylan from me, that he also got from Dylan, or that anyone can get from, like, that's like a wonderful journey to experience. It's just transferring like into that. Okay, I'm still pushing myself, but I'm also able to now bring students under and feel like they're contributing to them, and even if it's in my own way. You know, I've taught classes and stuff, but I don't really do it that way. Like I like to teach with Nick just by not really teaching him, but just training with him, you know, if you know what I'm saying. And that's what, that's because that's the way I learned. I think that's my bias. That's the way I learned best, is just, I could study Dylan's movement, you know, and I've been really fortunate that I've been around not just Dylan and Nick and, you know, but tons of amazing athletes here in Colorado. Like Dante taught me a lot. I don't know if you know Dante DeGrazioli. Yeah. Like all the dudes that you can name out here, the Apex guys, obviously Ryan Amos, and the gym like community out here has been really helpful, and being able to take part in that. But also just even traveling and meeting some of the more OG UK practitioners. Spending some time in Europe, like that, just being around certain heavy hitters like Philly D, or, you know, any of these people, it helps you get a grasp of how they approach training. And that's sometimes the key insight that I need to take myself past a plateau or, but yeah, anyhow.
Dude, so you started training with Dylan. That was like,
I started training just like on my own, like a lot of us. Like in 2010, there wasn't really that much to do, or there wasn't much Instagram or anything else. And even though there was a big community kind of around me, I didn't discover it until I was lucky. I discovered it pretty early in my training, but I started training basically alone. I would go on long runs and I would just like fucking jump over shit, you know? Like I would go on a long run. It would really just be a long distance run, like a 20 to 30 minute run. And I would just try to find easy things to jump over and vault. But I wasn't, but I was just like completely doing my own thing. And I knew about parkour, but I was kind of like just dipping my toe. And then I realized there was a group of people that would meet up at CU, the university in Boulder, every Tuesday and Thursday or something, and I came and met up with them, and you know, once a week or twice or sometimes every other week. And I met some people, like that guy. I can't even remember his name. There was this one dude who was like, he's like my Obi-Wan dude. He's dead, or my Qui-Gon if we're talking about Star Wars. But he's like, he's dead in my life. Like I don't know him. I never kept contact with him. But there was like this one individual that was kind of like the hub of that little meetup every few days. I don't even remember what his name was. I feel ashamed that I don't remember him, but I remember his face really well. And that guy really helped me like get things underground. And then of course I discovered Apex, like the community that and started attending classes. And I had a really close relationship with one of the guys who was already working there. Brother, him and my brother were like best friends in high school. Like I knew him from high school. Yeah.
Dude.
And so I was just really lucky, you know. I was just really fortunate in that regard, and then I was like, I'm doing this, you know. I finished up my degree, and I was like, I don't really want to go into that. I'm just gonna like be a parkour bum for a while and see. Go for it. I had a journalism degree technically, and I went to CU, but I studied like creative advertising is the track of the journalism school that I was in. Okay. And so it's like art direction and copywriting. And, you know, I just felt like it was really shallow and just empty to try to like sell stuff that I didn't believe in. And that was kind of like, at least that's the path that they point you on in that program. It's like, be a part of an ad agency. Whereas I'm like, I mean, I'm not against selling things, but I'm not into selling just anything. It's
tough. I feel like every parkour athlete, they have a form of artistry that not a lot of other recreational sports offer. So there's a lot of morality and drive towards the way that we move and then translate it to real life. So I could see you getting done with college and being like, it doesn't feel right, and making a decision to just training. Yeah. And I am, dude, that's crazy though. Listening to your podcast, like sometimes you've gotten kind of close to talking about where you started and stuff like that. And I'm like, he didn't say it. So yeah, man, no, that's history for me. I'm actually quite obsessed with the Colorado community. Like I've always been fond of it and wanted to know more about it. I used to watch like Dante's old videos on YouTube back in the day where they were at Cottonwood all the time. Remember like Ross Allen just being like,
my God, yeah.
Is that year-old?
Yeah, that dude, Ross. Ross is like, I love to put people in this Star Wars world for some reason, but I'm just like, Ross is such a little, he's like obviously Dante's protege. And is like, I don't know. He's just an amazing human, that kid.
Great athlete. It's so. I remember I was at a jam in Grand Junction a long time ago.
Oh, Vinny. Actually, I should have mentioned him, but Vinny Coriel, another huge inspiration to everyone in Colorado. But I think that's where you're going, at least.
I think the U.S., man. I
mean,
We saw
the world. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, he's beautiful, man. He a really awesome dude. We, my buddy Peter and Juan, we all drove up to Grand Junction for a jam, and Ross was there. And I think he had to at least be like 11 years old, and he was hitting like AA twists. And we were like, who is this kid? Like, so yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. Yeah, and Vinny, there was this show reel that he had on YouTube. It was like fall show reel, and it had that dubstep song, like I Can't Stop. And it was just, we listened to that thing on repeat in our car.
Yeah.
And then, he's unreal, man. He's a great athlete. So you started training with Dylan. And this is all leading up to descents.
Yeah, let's get there. Let's take our time, savor it. But yeah, let's get to the descents, because I think this is a fascinating thing. Like, it sounds like you're interested in it too. And I think the history of like how these moves even come to be, like it's all really fascinating to learn and know.
Because you know how descent started, right? Like I don't.
I would say that. Okay, here's my take on it. Descent is a broader term than most people give it credit for. In my opinion, I think a lot of people call the cat hang drop a descent, and in my world, it's a distinction. Descending, doing a descent means you're going from somewhere high to somewhere low, probably with more vertical ground being covered than horizontal, generally. But even if that's not a rule, it's just like if you're going down a lot of things and you're not going up, that's a descent. Like, that's descending movement. And a cat hang drop is what most people call a descent, where you're hanging in a cat and you release and you get into another cat. Or, we haven't exactly landed on a term there, but I understand like everyone uses both and interchangeably. I call them cat hang drops or cat drops.
Cat drops. I've heard cat drop.
And
for sure.
I don't like to call them descents, because I think it's more precise to say what the technique is. And I think that descent is just a bigger word than we're thinking of it. And I don't want to limit our language, because then people are going to think, oh, it's only going down the sides of parking garages. And it's like, no, it can be so many things.
Kind of like the difference of like a flip trick and a kick flip. Like there's multiple descents. That's just one version. Okay, I agree with that. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and the descent, like, itself, I would say started before, like, those the famous they're in is it Portugal or Lisbon or something, the cat backs, the cat reverse cat down.
Oh yes,
like that one's really well known. Like, I think, and the Yamakasi, like, people have been doing descents, manhood, that whole manhood line. Or not manhood, excuse me, manpower line. The famous manpower line where, David Bell's taking this huge roof gap and going down drops and he's doing cat drops, just not to a precision, just a big release and taking huge height drops, really. Like, that to me, that's a descent. That's like, that's like when you're starting to write the language of descent. And it's really uncrystallized yet. But to take it to where I think we want to go is, I would say that, Dylan kind of pioneered the technique that everyone is thinking about right now when they think about descents, which is the cat hang drop or the cat drop or whatever. And I was there when he was like, when we were figuring it out. Like, I don't know, dude, but like, I do feel like it was pretty cool, like, now looking at how big this move was, that I was like witness to like Dylan kind of like playing with the idea and then like doing some with him as he was figuring it out, and doing it on that Cherry Creek parking garage that kind of is now well known, because it's the genesis of this move as far as we know, and it came out in the Rogue Squad video, or actually before that on the Little Baker blog video that he put out in his own channel, and then he put out in the Rogue Squad video, and a lot more people saw it, and then he did it again in the Myrmidons like videos a few times, like stuff like that, and doing different ones, and I think he would. I know that he like thought of descents as broader than just that move as well. That's one of the reasons like why I take that position. What was his inspiration behind that? Like, what was he just like, yo, Brandon, I have this idea. Were you guys there? And he was just like, maybe we could do this. Like, what was he thinking to do that? I think he is just a visionary. And like certain people, like you're saying, like Jared's this incredibly talented athlete.
Yeah.
he doesn't know what the fuck to do with a camera apparently yet, or he's learning what that's going on, right? But okay, and so, you know, and that's one of the crazy things about, you know, this history of parkour is like Dylan is like exceptional at like innovating techniques in parkour. I mean, obviously this is like it's pretty hard to come up with something that's like, you know, it's still like, you could break it down to the building blocks. It's kind of just a cat hang, and it's basically a weird lache in a way. You know,
it is, yeah.
So like, absolutely. It's not like it's a brand new technique, but like it's really changed the language that we use in parkour because of just the way that he did it. And so he was just so brilliant at parkour and had already mastered so many things that he was always looking to his environment, I think, to actually adapt and see like what was possible. And for me, I think he was just like, I think it's possible to do that.
Yeah.
And that's like the craziest shit when you can step to that challenge without really knowing, because now everyone knows it's possible.
Yes,
and we all see each other doing it, and it's like, okay, it's still scary as fuck when you're first going for one, but actually once you've gone for a few and you kind of realize like, okay, this is not actually the hardest technique, it's really just a very scary technique because you can take it so high very quickly. But he just like, yeah, I mean, he was like, I think this is possible, and I was like, all right. And I mean, I think he had tried it a few times and done it once or twice, like on his own, and then I went and did a few with him and learned it with him, like before he'd actually done from a drop that could, you know, break your ankles or bruise your feet or do something really serious. And wow. I think again, it's just fascinating because that parking garage where he founded it was just it was just like the perfect spot. There's a lot of progressions that are there. I think the spot is really interesting. The spot will teach you how to do things that you wouldn't even know were possible. Yeah. And I think that one in particular is just, it lends itself to an easy-ish progression through the technique, because you can do it over the awning that's there. I don't know, you've been there, right?
Yeah.
You can do it over the awning and it's almost no consequence. Then you can take it over like an almost nothing drop and higher. And because the parking garage is staggered, it's almost like only a 5-foot increase each time.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he was already, you know, he's Dylan. He just was really good at assessing and committing to movements and just being like, once he realizes it can be ready, he was really good with the mental, you know? He wasn't going to let it stop him. He's not going to like sit on the third story for very long thinking like, oh, is this going to work here? He's like, no, it worked down there. It worked a little higher. It's going to work. And he was very matter of fact about a lot of what he could do because he was so experienced.
Wow. Dude, that was history for me to go back to that spot. Funny story, actually. I went for the Apex, the NAPC qualifier. That's why we were there. But I personally went to see that garage. Like that was I had to see it. I was like, I have to and I went, and I had never done a crane tech before. But for the sake of his 2014 video, I was like, I have to learn the crane tech, and I have to do it with the crane tech because that's how it was done.
Yes.
And beautiful, man. And speaking of like the Jedi mindset and stuff like that, it was really cool because, and not to throw them on this huge pedestal, but whenever I saw them done in the first place, I was actually out in Dubai, and I was coaching at a gym out there for 3 months.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, you don't train outside there. So it's just so
too hot.
It's summer. So I was sitting and just watching some YouTube videos, and I was like, I'm gonna watch some Dylan Baker. I hadn't seen his in a long time, and I watched his 2014 video, and there was a drone shot of it at Cherry Creek, and the scents were on my heart, like weighing on my heart for like a month before I could get home and get one. So it was just this hunger of like, okay, I gotta find a garage. And I spent like hours upon hours with Google Earth, and I mapped out and drove to 20 garages in Houston. I couldn't do any of them. I just went and looked. I was just, cool. Okay.
Wow.
Dude. I've never even gotten to meet Dylan. I saw him at International, but it definitely holds a special place in my heart for never meeting him, for sure. Just the sense definitely changed my life completely. So
because you've talked about that. I've seen you write about it a little bit, and I want to know a little bit more, like specifically, how did it change your life? Like, what did it do for you?
Let me get that phone real quick. I'm sorry.
Do your thing.
And I'm back.
And he's back.
A big thing was like I had been training parkour for like 7-ish years, but I there was no progress beyond. I felt like I had hit this top of my training that was like, okay, I'm just still really afraid of a lot of things. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, bro.
No, I'm just kidding. How dare you? Anytime Fitness. Be well to it, my friend. That's what's happening in the background on the wall here for you guys. A little Bruce Lee quote. Sorry, you're good. You're good.
Basically, I felt this big plateau in my training, and really I just started looking online, and I saw Nick's page, and I just saw him have this very calm approach to heights. And I never, dude, when I first started training, I was afraid to climb a ladder kind of thing. I'd be that friend that everyone was like, dude, let's go get on a roof. I'm like, I don't know, man. That might be a bad. And it was just this slow process where I also stopped worrying about, I just got into my own lane, and I was like, okay, I want to do descents. I know I want to do them. Even if it's the second to first story, I'll be extremely happy. And it turned into this long progression of, I bought a notebook and I would just go and sit. I found one garage that I could do second to first story, and I would go and sit there for like 4 hours. And my girlfriend, she'd be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm still training this descent. And I'd be there for 4 or 5 hours just taking notes and figuring it out. And eventually I repped this one garage for like 2 months, second to first story. And my first third story was out in Dallas. I saw it and I was like, oh, I'm only here for 2 days. I have to do it. And that I don't do them in 2 days. Normally it takes a lot longer for me because heights, that is me. Heights scare me a lot. But that one I did in 2 days, and I just like freaked out. And I was like, okay, I know I can do these now. I can take them higher and higher and higher, and it won't bother me. And it became a full obsession. So it became 8-hour training days on one garage. By the way, I lived out of my car. And that was coming home from Dubai. I took the money that I had, I bought a car, built it out a little bit. And a lot of that was to go towards descents and really focus on them. I didn't know that I was going to buy a drone and start filming all of them. That was just me being like, I want to learn these things and master them. And in a sense, I mean, it sounds like a little prideful, but it was like an opportunity for me to forge something too. Like I was saying earlier, I was like, man, I could really focus on this, kind of like a martial art. Like this could be my sword training or bow staff training. I could really dial in on this one thing. And I'd never done that with my training before. It was always like, I'm going to go train. And it was more body exhaustion over 6 hours, of like I hit some rail precisions, hit a couple comprees. It was the first time of looking at it almost like projecting something. So now I have like 3 thick journals of just notes on notes on notes on just cat drops. And
wow, dude, that's so valuable. I think that's amazing because like, you said that I don't want to cut you off because I'm really interested in where this is going, but also I think it's really important for people to recognize that the fact that you aren't crazy gifted at like a Jared or somebody at descents forced you to actually figure something out in a really, really detailed and really like methodical way that I think with those journals, whatever's written in them, I don't know if it ever comes out, but it's actually allowed you to go a lot further with your descents than most people because you've actually articulated every last detail of what they mean and what it is. I think, which, people sometimes think that, oh, like it's great to be the talented person. Sometimes you don't know how to do the hardest work like that you're doing there until, and I don't know. I just think it can be, it plays both sides because I've been, a witness and aware to certain things that I've come really easy to me, but then those are the ones I plateau with the hardest because I never had to figure them out. Whereas the things like that you really hone in on sometimes are really, really, once you really isolate it and figure out the building block, now you have something you can really work with.
Nice. No, that dude, beautifully said. That's exactly how it felt too. And on top of it, you also start learning like, man, I don't train as hard, as smart as I could have in the past. And so then I started applying it to every kind of training, like rail precisions or everything at height. And it was so crazy to me because it went from like, I was afraid of almost everything. And I, and I'm saying this out loud for everyone, that's very vulnerable for me to say. I was training for 7 years and I was just so scared of even like 9-foot running precisions if it was over 8 feet off the ground. And so training to sense really changed that for me. And I went from really, really scared to like, I was able to compete at NAPC last year for skill. And that was huge for me because I was like, I didn't make it past the top 10. I actually got 11. Dude, I got 11.
Oh gosh, what are you gonna do? Skill's so fun though. Skill's the best challenge, best competition of all the three, because it's almost no pressure. It's a lot more like you're just training.
Yeah, it did.
I love skill. I love the skill challenge. That's my favorite one to compete in. But I was never the one that I could win. So,
dude, you. So, not to change the subject, but I do want to get to the Nordstrom Grand Prix that you did. How fast did you do that, and how long did you know it was there?
That Nordstrom Grand Prix was something that I looked at in 2015, or maybe a little earlier. But I seriously looked at it in 2015 when Storm America was filming their tour. I don't know if you saw the Storm America video.
Dude, so sick.
But that was one of the. I want to do a whole segment on the Storm America video because I don't know. Just to get a little nostalgic, but also to break down some of this history, and I think that project just deserves a little more attention. But it was like, I'm gonna do that. I was ready to do it, I think, that day, but I was feeling like, just a little bit off, and I was doing some warm up Kongs, and I just hit there was like just a bunch of dust that I didn't recognize. I didn't see, and I didn't like check for, and just slipped and like hit my ass on the ground, like just doing a warm-up Kong. Like it wasn't really that bad of a bail or anything, but I just like rocked me, and I was like, if I can't do that, I'm not doing it today. Okay. And then I didn't really like look at it seriously for a long time, and it just kind of sat there in the back of my mind, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go up there. And I went up there a few times even and looked at it, and I was just feeling like a little bit torn in like my training for a few years, just like, where am I going? Like, what do I want? Why am I trying to risk my life, in this? And why do I really want to do these things? And, things with Merm kind of went in different directions. So I didn't have like the same training energy that I used to with those guys. But, and then with Nick, some of that was coming back, and it was like, and once somebody does it again, like he stepped to it first. Once he broke the challenge, it made me realize like I can do this challenge. Yeah. And I really wanted to. It made me also just kind of like be like, yeah, this is more accessible than I made it in my head. And
wow.
And it's just weird because like I think sometimes that when I was getting older, I was training less just to help protect my joints and like make sure that my sustainability was still upward. Because I don't want to like have like this complete drop off, and so I've come up against injuries where I'm like, all right, I got to take a lot more time to just notice what is going on with impact, because again, for me, it's kind of the opposite. Like I think I excelled a little bit too quickly early on, and so my technique was good, but it was never like what it's going to be and what it is now, even in terms of like how well I understand how to use my body and the muscles and everything to contact concrete in a way that's really sustainable and can make me like last, but still be able to do big stuff, because I like doing big stuff.
Nice.
And but yeah, once Nick did it, I was like, all right, I did like a few warm-ups, and I was like, I'm ready to go. Because the one thing that I had done over the years was like, I've done Kongs and I've done a lot of heights training, and so I'm pretty good about making the decision and not being that scared. Even though I started off like you, I was very scared to be at height, and still am like uncomfortable with a lot of things at height. But I know when I'm like being silly about it and when I'm being smart about it. And when I'm being silly about it, it's not hard for me to make the decision and go anymore, because that's one of the things that I focused in on really hard, was just like that intuitive sense of like, all right, is this safe? And am I overcoming something, or is this risky and I need to back down?
Okay. So that day you felt pretty comfortable then, like after he had
I
done
felt like, I just felt, I mean, I surprised the hell out of myself in some ways, for sure, because I was like, this feels, because that's one of the things I think I had to let go of, was like, I need to be training constantly. I need to like always be on this level, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be really on point with your technique, especially if you're going over huge height gaps, but you can't beat yourself up if I needed to instill and remember that I've been training for a long time. Those techniques, I haven't done them yesterday, but they didn't go away. They didn't disappear. And like, I still had this momentum and I still had technique and I still understood things. And as I started to like let that idea kind of take hold in my brain, I realized that like I can still progress without having to train at the volume that I used to train, because my volume had to come down to protect my body. And sure. And that just navigating through that space of being like, how am I still going to push myself mentally and with big challenges without needing to train high volume and power and stuff, the kind of stuff that will break my body over time.
The volume. I think the volume is the hardest thing to, like, I turned 25 this year, so I'm now experiencing, if I don't warm up, if I don't cool down, if I'm not foam rolling a couple times a week, I do notice like it's not that fun to train because now it hurts. So I'm now experiencing the volume of, I used to train 6 days a week, and now I train probably 3, maybe 4, and for way less time. But I don't hit a lot of small challenges anymore. I'll go out and I hit some warm-up stuff, and then I'll hit some medium challenges and maybe 2 or 3 that scare me. And then that's normally a session for me, whereas before it was like train until my legs fall off, go and eat Chipotle. And, now it's, no, I feel you completely. And it's cool because I've heard you talk about that a little bit on your podcast about you turning 30, right? And that was kind of like
now.
31.
But I was 30.
Cool.
I was 30 for the Nordy Kong. That was cool because I think that was one of the things that inspired me. Was I was like, people probably think, like, I used to think like, damn, like when I'm that age, I probably won't be doing that kind of stuff. I did,
yeah. But I mean, you're proof that you can still send at 30. I mean, that's notably to me probably one of the biggest Kong prees done in the States. Probably. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's a big scary Kong pre, but it's I wouldn't say it's anywhere near like the power levels that are required or the highest in the States, but that's one of the reasons why you can do it, like at a crazy height like that. Yeah. But it is a big scary looking Kong for sure.
Is there a warm up at the bottom, or is it just?
There is a. If you're okay taking the huge impact, you can just do it over basically a non-drop. Cool. But it's a lot of impact, that one. Okay. And so it's kind of like one of those things again, like as I've gotten older and learned wiser, I'm just like, I'm not like certain challenges. It's like, I only have a few attempts before I'm like putting my body at risk of injury.
Yeah.
And that's because I need to probably be more conditioned as well, so I can throw it like 20, 30 times. But I don't like to train that way anyways. So I usually don't even pick challenges if I feel like I'm going to have to take huge amounts of impact for like double digit amounts of attempts.
Okay.
It's just like after suffering some injuries and things, I'm just like, it's really never worth it to me to have like a bum ankle for a few weeks just because I really wanted some one thing when I could have waited. And that was another beautiful thing about that Nord Kong, is just like, it came to me. I stopped thinking about it, and then all of a sudden one day it was just like, oh, this is easy. I didn't like have to work through anything. I just knew that I could do it. It was really weird. I didn't really want to do it. I just all of a sudden knew I could, and I was like, oh, well, if I can, I might as well do it. So
isn't that crazy, man? 2015.
Yeah.
So what? That was 2018, right? No, 2019.
It was 2019. So yeah, it took like 4 years before I was like, all right, this is fine.
Special, man. No, that's special. Like, definitely write about that and repost that. Like, that's something that I get a lot of messages from people, and they're like, dude, how do you get in the descents? And I don't know how to explain it. So I take a lot of time to reply to them and say like, a lot of time. You know what?
Yeah, it's like there's no secret really. It's, you'll know when you got a lot of experience under your belt.
And how often were you training? What was your volume around that time?
It was super low. I mean, but here's the thing: is like all it is a big, powerful Kong. Yeah. And it's not even your max power or anything. But like for me, it's like I know how to hit a Kong and be in the right body position in air.
Dude, that's inspiring.
If you think about it that simply, it's like I've been doing Kongs for a long time. It's not like I'm learning a new move. It's, can I go up, do a really good Kong? 80% power or higher will do, and I'll be safe, you know, obviously being focused, but you have to break it down that simply to like, you know, I can't make it bigger than what it is. But I never really try to advise anyone to take my advice even, you know, like you're saying, it's just like, I could tell you, but it's really just a lot of time and just my own knowing and my experience and what I've done for, you know, it's always a culmination of my entire history up to that moment. You know, everything I've learned.
I think that how you just explained it was really well said. Like you explained it in a way of like, I kept it to the basics. Sometimes I've seen things explained and sometimes it can be explained what I would see in an irresponsible manner that could get someone hurt. It's always nice to say, you train the basics forever. And then you go up later and you test yourself whenever you feel like your heart's ready, whenever, you know, and I love that you said 4 years. 3-4 years. That's beautiful. Like, I had, so the descent that actually got some recognition for me, which surprisingly wasn't on a drone, which a little upset about that.
People don't know what they like, dude. You have to tell them what they like, apparently. They don't know what's good. They don't know what's good, I should say. They know what they like, but they don't know what's good.
Yeah, when in the depth of that zone. Yeah. No.
I saw the one that got tweeted by SportsCenter, right? That one? Is that the one you're referring to? All right, please continue.
So that was like that one was an 8-month progression. And I lived 3 hours away from it. So I was driving up to Austin from Houston, and it's on 6th Street. So it's on the street where all the bars are, where South by Southwest is.
Okay. I mean, I don't really know Austin, but love it.
Okay.
One day I will. I want to come out.
Dude, come on out. Yeah. And so I was training there. And at the end of the weekend, because Jared lives up in Austin, so I would drive to that garage and I would train it for 2 or 3 hours and then come home. And it started with the first story. A couple months later, I hit the third. A couple months later, I hit the fourth. Then at around 6 months, I re-established the way I wanted to do it, and I went from 2 feet to crane tech. And that was post Colorado trip whenever I figured out the crane tech, and I was like, oh, wow, that feels way nicer. You don't feel like you're just like hitting 2 feet and like, all right, I'm extremely vulnerable. Yeah.
I think Elijah Mueller.
Yeah,
he's the only other person, like, he's one of the only people I could think of who's just like always never crane, like with the descent. I love it. But again, it's always to each his own. It's like if he feels more comfortable, then that's the way he does it.
Yeah, he's actually another guy that I looked up to. I actually haven't gotten to meet him, but just watching his descents is him and Joe Scandrett.
Oh yeah,
Scandrett is the king. I like to reference him as you got the founder, you got the Steve Jobs as Dylan Baker. Nick Ortiz, he's like the Edison, he's like the innovator, and you got Joe Scandrett, the king. He took it to the top. But yeah, so I was going back and forth to this garage and reestablished. I got the 4th level at the crane tech, and then 2 months later, it was really weird, man. I was like, okay, this isn't getting any less scary anymore. Because I would go up to the top and look at the end of each session, and I was like, I've gotten to the max point where it's like you hit that 95% of prep, and then there's the 5% of the experience and unknown that you just will never tap into. You got to hang, you got to give it a go. And we went, and I hung from it twice and climbed up, and I was like, absolutely not. And we climbed to the bottom, and it took me about 45 minutes before I finally like gave it a go. And I was very blessed to have like Jared and my friend Dana. She's the one who's done most of my drone shots for me. They stood there the whole time. They didn't say a word. They let me process myself, which is beautiful. Like they didn't care if we would have been there for 4 hours. So I felt no pressure. It was just I hung a few times. I talk out loud a lot, and I was just like, no, I'm good, guys. And we go to the bottom, and I'm like, okay, I'll go live one more time. And then did it, and Jared was so hyped that day. He actually sent a 5-story descent that day. I could just because it's Jared. But and then that actually happened in July of last year, August of last year. So the ESPN thing didn't happen until this year, which is really interesting because then I'm getting all these followers and messages and stuff like that. But the hype of that the excitement had been gone for half a year at this point. So I had to revisit I had to rewatch the video myself and be like, oh, that is cool. Yeah, for sure. It was a beautiful experience, though. I think that's the one, not to, I hope no one gets offended, but I do have like a heavy faith in God. And that was, that's fairly new, of about a year. Descents helped me find that faith just by trusting in myself. And that 5% that I talk about was just, trusting that. Because a lot of people ask like, oh, well, what if you fall? And I'm sure I'm sure you've gotten that with height stuff in general. What if you fall? And for me, again, no offense to anyone who has their own beliefs. This is just mine. To me, it's like, if God wants me to not succeed in this after I've put 100% work in, I'm okay with that. And that's my best answer to people. Once my mind and my body not here after all that prep, I'll understand.
That's powerful, man. I mean, I actually think that's really fascinating. That is one of the things that, if you don't mind, I would like to talk about a little bit more, because it sounds like it's very important to you, and I don't think it's going to offend anybody. And whatever, if they do get offended, like, I don't know, we'll stop listening. But but because I think that's really powerful. Like, it's just interesting. You talk about it as this last 5% and cultivating that belief in yourself, or belief in a bigger power or higher presence, and like, what was it that you said it kind of, the sense brought this into your life? And
yes, absolutely.
Can you talk more about that? Just like where you were at before that, and like where you're at now?
Oh, dude. So like, I guess, I'll get into the meat. Like, whenever I was a kid, my whole life had kind of been surrounded by this negativity of being a kid, right? So like I turned 4 and my house burned down. And then in that same year, my dad was diagnosed with ALS, so muscle degenerative disease. And then I turned 11 and my house burned down again. And my dad passed away. God, so my house burned twice growing up. And that was kind of like, it's weird because that was like the introduction to skateboarding in my life. I found that as a source of just like, I guess, coping. And as a kid, you don't look at it as coping, though. You're just like, I want to do something fun because all that stuff happened and it sucks. So, second house burned down and my dad passed away a couple months later. So we go from like my dad being like the money maker, like the hard worker that he was, to my mom never having to work. And then we go to assisted income apartments from like this big house that my dad had built that is now gone.
Oh my God. Can I ask really real quick how it burnt down, or how both of them burnt down?
So electrical fire for the first, and then the second one they don't know. That is, it could have been anything. A toaster, it could have been, I don't know. But
anyhow, sorry. That just, I mean, that's a wild, that's obviously terrible, unfortunate, but I'm sure we're
oh, dude, it makes you who you are, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that's why parkour connected to me so much. Was it really made me a minimalist in a sense, and that's kind of why I live in my car now and do what I do with that, is because I've lost everything twice. Yeah. And so now I don't need that much to make me happy. And I guess I strayed from my belief in God whenever I was a kid, because my dad passed away and all that happened. And I was like, in a sense, really angry as a kid. And I was like, how can all that happen and there be someone at a greater power allowing it, in a sense?
I follow that logic as as 11-year-old me, for sure. I would be feeling the same way, man.
Yeah, just an angry little kid.
Well, I mean, Jesus, that's a lot for any person to deal with, much less a young boy or whatever, a young man like you.
Yeah, and then I went through just life. I started working at a gym, and I got my associate's degree, and just things weren't very fulfilling. Parkour was pretty fulfilling. I think I was filling a void with parkour. I was allowing parkour to fill a void in my life that was unhealthy. And I feel like a lot of parkour athletes may experience this. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I couldn't agree more with you. Real quick though, can we fill the gap between skateboarding and parkour? I feel like we missed something there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I got into skateboarding first. And this was right after my second house burned down. And I excelled in that. I had nothing to do. So I had this little iPod and I just would listen to music and skateboard like 7 hours a day after school. My mom couldn't get me inside. That was a very creative phase for me. That's where I think I became more of an artist rather than like an athlete. At the same time, I was learning guitar and piano, and just a bunch of stuff. I started filling my life with things that could last. And I think that a lot of that was filling different voids from my childhood. And I was like, okay, I lost so much, I can start filling the gaps here and there. So I skateboarded for 3 or 4 years. I did a few competitions. That was fun. Nothing past like pro-am stuff. It was just, I never went to like a pro competition, but, and then I found parkour at 15 and I saw like do you remember that 3-run video that was like, it was like, do, 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 do.
I'm sure. Yeah. I remember it. I mean, I've seen them all. Yeah.
Yeah. The buildings, the big roof gaps. Yeah. Just sick stuff at the time, and I was like, okay, that's what I want to do for sure. And I turned 18 and it was weird, because my mom also, she suffers from like mental health. She wasn't able to really take care of us in the best of ways. So there was no backup of money or college to be had or anything like that. So I actually moved out into my brother's apartment on his couch. And at this time, I would say I was an extremely lazy person. I think the role model of not having a dad around in those last few years, I just kind of became a dummy or a goofball. I was still learning. So then from there, I felt as if parkour was already in my life at this time for a couple years. And my brother-in-law was like, hey man, he lived in a town 30 miles away and there was a gym there. And he's like, hey man, come down here. You could live with us, go to college. And I give a lot of credit to them. My brother-in-law, he's a solid dude. He was in the Army. He fought in the war in Iraq. He's a beautiful dude. Never asks for attention. Just an amazing, beautiful hearted person, him and my sister. And they were like, come live with me. And you can work at this gym. We'll get you a job and you can go to school under your FAFSA or whatever. So I came and I became a personal trainer. I started working like 40, 50 hours a week. Parkour kind of took a break because I needed to get my soul in order in a sense, my work ethic in order. And they taught me about work ethic, and they taught me to, so for 2 years I was in school, 12 to 15 hours a semester and working 40, 45 hours a week. And it was interesting. I was lifting a lot too. Parkour kind of took an absence, but a necessary absence, I feel. And it also, so then I finished the associates, and same like you, I was like, I don't want to go back for that. I don't want to finish my bachelor's. Parkour is like calling my name. So I had met my girlfriend at the time now, her name's Abby, and I was about 21 whenever all that stuff was done, 2 to 3 years doing that. And she had convinced me to really dive into parkour again and make it something special. And so I was thinking of Instagram names, and I thought of the Parkour Journal, and she was like, go for it. And so that's where that kind of spawned. She was like, yeah, go all in. And so then I started training really hard for a while, and that's the Parkour Journal is where I started training harder. I still couldn't quite excel past what I wanted to. And I got a message on Instagram from this gym called Gravity out in Dubai. This is about mid 2018 at this point. And they were like, hey, like, do you want to come and coach out here? And I almost deleted the message because, you get so many random DMs. So I was like, that's fake.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah. Yeah. Especially coming from Dubai. You're like, come on.
Yeah, it's not real. And I said, okay. And then it turned into like an interview. And then it turned into me going out there, and I got to teach for 3 months, meet so many amazing people, a lot of calisthenic guys, and I got to see their diets and the way that they train, and kind of put that into my parkour, and just started eating a lot healthier and more clean. And I had already done that, but they really refined it. They were the guys, like I met Eric Ortiz. So he was one of the coaches at this gym. And he's like, he won King of the Bars like 3 years in a row. He was the guy, you know, and seeing him train, it made me realize like he was training like 4 hours a day before classes would start.
Whoa.
And all calisthenics. Yeah. And I was like, bro, who am I? Like, why have I not been doing that with parkour? So all this built up to me coming home. And I remember I set out a goal. I was like, I'm going to go to NAPC and I'm going to do descents, because I'd seen Nick on Instagram while I was out in Dubai. And then that's what I did. I came home and I bought a car, moved into it, and really gave descents a solid try. And at this point I was still very, I don't like the term atheist, but like, I just didn't believe in anything. There wasn't anything guiding my heart other than things that I was filling a void with. Parkour, fitness, nutrition, friends, girlfriend. I was putting everything at the throne of my heart besides God, and what I see as the ultimate innovator, the ultimate creator, the guy who makes all this possible. I like calling him the watchmaker. You know,
okay.
Like, it's just, and I had gotten up to doing that chase descent, and I did it. And I remember that was the only descent, and you know, not to scare anyone or make anyone feel bad for me or anything, but whenever I was hanging from the top of that descent, I was also going through like some heavy depression stuff because of all this fulfillment stuff. I was like, man, this is the 20th descent I've done, probably the 7th one at a high level that I could really hurt myself. What am I doing this for? And I remember like talking out loud to God on top of that garage, and I was like, you know, if this is, you know, if I fall today, you know, you know, help me out here. My mind is not in a happy place. Like, you know, make me fast and accurate, make me be able to do this, and make me okay. And whenever I got to the bottom, I went and bought a Bible. I went and bought Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and I just started reading ever since. Wow. And found this really good relationship with me and who I believe is the creator of everything. And he's, you know, it's made my life filled with love, and it's made me spread love even more than I ever have. And yeah, so I think I had a heavy call to do descents, maybe for social media purposes, but mainly for myself, you know, and that's really special to me, that now whenever I get older, I know why I fell into that. Basically, what I thought that heights were going to do for me, it turned out God did that for me. And it was just, it's a really beautiful time in my life, really awakening, really pulled me out of a really dark time as well. I was really angry at him because of my dad, the houses, my mom, our whole situation. And, you know, getting past all that, I realized like trusting in him, without all that stuff happening, I wouldn't have been able to push myself to the limit that I had. And I think there's something special there too. Like going through hardships makes you way stronger. So people mistake looking at hardship as like, as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And instead, and if you can change that perspective, then, you know, kind of flip flop it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an amazing outlook. I mean, I think it's beautiful. I think it's 100. I love it. You know, I don't know what really to say other than like, you know, I did say it was unfortunate. Obviously, it feels that way, but the fact that you can see it as like the gift that it was to you now, and that it helped you forge your own reality that now you're living in, that you are experiencing so much love and happiness. It's just, it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's a journey that you share with a lot of people. You know, I think it's really awesome that you're willing to share it and be so honest about like your thoughts on it, because I think a lot of people need to just feel that, even if they don't believe in the same thing you do, they need to understand that this is a spiritual journey that they're on sometimes. And if they're, I mean, I love the way, like, I want to know if you can talk a little bit more about like filling that void. Like, what does that feel like now that it's not a void, and how did it feel then? Because I think that's like a really key difference. I certainly am, I'm of the same persuasion, I think, where I was abusing parkour, and and that's one of the reasons why I know it wasn't sustainable. Is because like I was beating my body up to avoid certain things, or to like to escape certain things. Like that's why I ran into like these issues. Whereas like I'm coming at it from a much healthier place now, and I'm already building momentum. I can see, and like there's energy there that didn't exist because I'm actually doing it for, love and not for like this out of anger or out of, I've talked about it a little bit sometimes on this podcast around my posts, but could you describe what that means to you about the void that you were filling?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said too about beating up your body, right? Like it's like you almost start abusing yourself and policing yourself in certain ways that you're like, wait, I started this for happiness. Like, and then after you're like, I'm purposefully hurting myself. Why? And no, I think you're right. At the void that I was feeling was all my emotions, the love that I wanted to give other people, the anger that I had towards my heart, towards God, towards my family, and not my family in a bad way, but my family having to go through all that. Just all that anger pent up. And I was like, I can replace it with the good times that I have with parkour. But then now with parkour, it's beautiful again. I feel like I'm 15 years old hitting, my first front flip every time I'm out training. It feels, and this goes for anyone doing any sport. It doesn't have to be parkour. Like, you know what I mean?
I do.
Like now reapproached it. You are so happy going out to train now. And there's a time in the past where you almost felt like you just had to because it was routine. And by the time you're done training, you didn't actually feel that happy. And it was just like, I'm just out here pushing the push because that's what I told myself I would do at 15. And now I enjoy it. Now I take a lot of time in between projects too. Like I'll work on a garage for however long I want to. And if the video comes out, it comes out. And if it doesn't, then I heavily, I don't feel any pressure anymore. There's not a lot of pressure to innovate. It's more fun to innovate now too. So there's before I felt like it was forging. Now I feel like it's just creating, and we get to be our own little watchmakers of like how parkour is going to go for us and for our communities around us. And it made me a happier person. I can say that at jams, I was very quiet around that time and just not very communicative. Now I try to meet everyone I can, try to, spread the good word of parkour. Yeah.
The Parkour Bible's the next Instagram handle.
Bro, heck yeah. Like that's the goal. Like, yeah, man. And just, really utilizing it for what I believe is the main reason, like becoming the best version of yourself, which, I think that's the goal for everybody really, but we all find our own little weird ways to do it. And, Descents just so happened to lead me to mine.
Yeah. No doubt. I love that, man. Just so much valuable information there, I think, for people. And, I think it's really brave of you to share that you're, so passionate and believe so, honestly and authentically in this God, because I wish I could say like I'm almost envious in that like, wow, you really believe it. Like I can tell, and I'm like, I'm not in this kind of space where I'm just like, not that I'm doubtful. I believe in a spiritual path, and I believe that mine is happening and it's positive and it's all in good for me, and all the things that are very tied to a Christian faith, which I was born into, but really? I haven't the same outlook as you do, but I think it's amazing that I really celebrate someone who feels that way about their spiritual path, because
Thanks, man.
I think it's amazing for somebody to just be out there and be doing it. And I think one of the reasons, like you said, that you've got this knowledge and this knowing of where you're at with that now is due to that gift of that hardship, that you went through. Is like, it's put you through a lot, and it's given you now this amazing faith and trust that you spoke about in your most recent post, which I thought was amazing.
Oh, and, thanks, man, for reading it.
And we all have our own thing. I don't know if I'll get to the point where I'm going to be, following the Bible specifically, but I do 100% continue to see myself developing and continuing to cultivate a spiritual connection with the universe, with whatever it is. That's really, I want to cultivate it. And that's what I see your faith is about. And that ultimately we share the same faith, even if mine's not coming straight from the same book or whatever.
And dude, for years I called it, like that's really the overall message is find that thing that has a divinity to it beyond our bodies. And to me, like like that's beautiful what you said. Like I called it the universe for so long, and that was beautiful. Like I love the book, The Alchemist. Have you ever read that?
I've had it recommended to me, and I need to be on that, but I have not read it yet.
It's just about the whole point of the book is that we can make whatever we want to make.
Yeah,
and that we can create whatever we want to create. And I think it's beautiful that what you just said about the universe, like it doesn't have to be a name. It could be you listening to the signs that are given to you and you making the best life for yourself out of it, whether it's walk in this direction, talk to this person, talk to your girl about this or your best friend about this, helping someone. Like that's the whole point. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what definitions we put on it. I feel like the definitions will change over every 100 years.
Yeah, people we really like to get narrowed in on like what we can pick at there, but it's just like that's not really the point. It's like the point is I want to be a positive influence, and it to me it kind of fundamentally comes down to like this two-sided thing where it's like you either have there's really no reason to be good other than to choose it, for yourself, or to be whatever you think is like you have a certain way that you can and want to be, and there's not going to be evidence for that. It's not going to be, and if you follow just like the evidence, then you're not really choosing, if you're following just whatever, something else is telling you. I think it's just, I don't know. I just watched the Matrix trilogy, so I'm like, I'm thinking it's coming down to that. Yeah. It's like, well, that one, I mean, the Matrix trilogy has so much Christianity and like spiritual overtones in it. And I think it's really powerful. And that's just kind of the story of mankind, and the story of life is just this constant like need to face the unknown and face that with either love and understanding and acceptance or resistance and fear and those two things. And again, there's not, you can take either of those energies, and you ultimately will take both to an extent, like no one's going to be the divineness embodied, probably, at least not in the few generations coming up. I don't see humans like getting to that level, but maybe if we evolve to a certain degree, like who knows what's possible.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. And by the way, I love those movies. Spam time. Yeah. I don't know if like something specific that really, I think about a lot whenever I think about those movies was in the second movie, whenever he sees the Oracle for the second time. I thought it was really cool whenever it was like talking about making choices, and she was like, you're not here to make a choice, you're here to understand why you made it. And I was like, that's pretty good. That's that hits home sometimes. You know what I mean? We're always, it's like taking a second to realize like we're not always there sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, wait, why did I send that jump? And then you get back to the feels of it, and it's like, oh, because like a lot of growth and stuff happened there, and some, we're always learning lessons about ourselves. It seems like moments after the moment happens. And it's like, oh, okay, like
we only connect the dots in hindsight, as the Steve Jobs would say, or it's very strange. I've had like abrupt wake up calls to like my own spirituality, because I was just like in the same space as you, very resistant, very like I don't believe in anything really. Believing in nothing, and just testing that out. That's why I want to believe in something, is because I've lived the other path. I don't like it. It didn't work for me. I was very depressed. I was very sad, and I wasn't understanding the choices I was making. And that's I think like why I've moved through that into a place of where I want to believe in myself, even if there's no reason to, and believe in making that choice. But yeah, for me, it's like I fell into like, some walls. Like I'm very hard headed. I think I read it in another one of your posts that you're very hard headed, and like I see myself the same way. It's like I've made some ridiculous errors, and I've had to like just be like, fuck, I got that tattooed on me. Like I don't like, like I've got like a tattoo, like all my tattoos. I'm like, what was I thinking?
I've heard you talk about a little bit like your past and stuff like that, and I think that's awesome that you're the person that you are today, man. Like you're contributing to the parkour community in a really unique way, especially in the States. I don't see anyone putting out stuff that you are. You're also a mad sender. You have a history behind you that will stick, which is really awesome. Like that's a very special thing. People don't realize how special. Like in the future, like. Your name will not be uttered until future generations. People will say it. Yeah, man. I heard a podcast where you're talking about, some of the, was it drug stuff that
I mean, yeah, I was filling the void for a long time as well. I'm completely unconscious of filling my void. We all have our own different traumas, I had like my own family upbringing and things that happened and like things that I felt victimized by, or just like, that got me angry with my relationship with the universe or with God or with whatever you want to say.
You mind going in on it? Or
I mean, I don't mind. I was actually thinking about doing a solo episode about talking about this, and like, because I think it's really powerful for people. Yeah. Because I needed this when I was a young kid. Yeah. And like, it's not something I was ever actually, I knew even at a young age, I was like, one day you're going to have to tell your story about that. And I guess today's the day, because I not that there's like a huge story, but like, this is like one of the things that I got so in my head about. And one of the things that caused me so much insecurity for years was like, I used to wet my bed basically when I was a fucking little kid. Really? Like, and I went from like not wetting the bed to wetting it because like of stress in the home, because, well, I don't know what it was from, but like, God bless my parents. They're amazing people, and they have figured it out. But everyone, like, especially me being my age now, where I'm as older than they were when they had me. Okay. I understand like how little you know about life still. And like, I mean, whatever. I'm just saying, I'm not pointing the blame at them, because I know that they're doing their best, but as a kid, you don't know how to deal with the things that are coming at you. And so like, I had a lot of just fighting and anger and like just tension in the home when I was a kid. And apparently that made me, I found out later it's because, I'm just kidding. I was about to make a joke about, I was going to say, I guess I just had like this fat dick with like too big a bladder, like, I don't know. Like my system was just too big. That's the excuse I'm going to go with from now on. It's just telling people, I just had too big a dick for my child body. But no, it really, I just like, it was just a, I was wet in the bed for like into my teenage years. Like I was like really just, I had this terrible secret where I was like, I couldn't be myself with anybody. I had this thing where I was like, I'm not going to tell anyone about it, because it was just, that's just social or suicide. I was never going to fit in or be with.
That's so no, but it makes sense, man. I mean, I remember being a kid and like, I got armpit sweat under I can't get rid of the armpit sweat under my shirt. And
dude,
I
just sleepovers and shit, like I'm at my friend's house, like I can't go to sleep. I'm up all night, I'm fucking like, I'm just like, I couldn't trust myself, it was just, it was a really, and I just remember feeling the same way you felt, where I was just like, dude, life is fucking so unfair. I was just like, why is this happening to me? Like, I can't just have a normal life. Like, what the fuck? Just being so upset and just being like, you know what? Fuck this.
That really affected you, like coming up. Like,
oh yeah. Well, I mean, it was just like my home life was just, it was really weird. I had like a lot of gifts. I knew I was very lucky. I was very, very aware of like, I'm so lucky to be who I am, because I just understood at a young age just the global scene for some reason. I think it's because my parents are both from different countries. My mom's from Peru. My dad was actually born in France. And like,
really?
Yeah. So they like, they'd immigrated, and I kind of like, because of just my family speaking Spanish on one side, and like just like I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is anyone? I always saw myself as kind of like, all right, I'm like a person on Earth, but I don't know why everyone like pretends that like this nation matters more than that one, and this person matters more than this one, and I just was like very confused, and just being like, damn,
you saw that
as a pretty young kid. I was just like, I don't know why I'm so lucky that I get to like live this life, you know. But also I felt really unlucky because still I was like, all right, I can't complain about it because I know I'm fucking lucky. But also I saw my peers around me, and I was like, I just assumed like their parents must be like so loving, and their homes probably are so nice, and like they don't have to worry about this shit, and they don't have like, I don't know. Everyone feels like an outcast when they're a little kid. That was my thing. That was part of my thing, was just like, I felt like I was just, there was something wrong with me for a very long time. And that took me into like, just like drugs and stuff early on, because I was really uncomfortable with girls, especially with women, talking to girls. And like, I really liked, I had a lot of really big crushes on girls, but I could never talk to them. I could never tell them. I was just like, I would friend zone myself. I would just put myself like around or peripheral, or I pretend I would fucking hated them, or, you know, just anything but actually being vulnerable and like admitting my feelings to these women or young girls, whatever. But so then I got into alcohol, because I was like, oh shit, like alcohol made me confident. You know, alcohol got me out of my head and made me just not give a shit about anything anymore. And it was such a relief to not be so worried, because I was a very anxious, like neurotic child in some ways.
Wow.
Because I think it was like, and I'm not trying to brag, but like I also had this terrible thing going on in my private life, but then I was like gifted as a elementary school kid, you know, like whatever. I'm not saying I was like fucking Bill Gates or whatever, some kind of genius. I'm just saying like I got put ahead in the math classes. So I felt like I was really special in some ways, but I felt like I just had this weird dynamic where I was like, all right, I'm in the 4th grade math class or the 5th grade math class at 3rd grade, you know, hanging out with the smart kids of the 4th graders, thinking like, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty hot shit. But then like, meanwhile, I'm just like super insecure. And so I had this thing where I felt like all the things that I did to get love or for people to like me was external. Like everything was external. It was like I knew all the right answers. That's why people liked me. Or I knew, or I could get, or I could do, I don't know, things on the playground. Like I was always pretty physical. So I just thought like it was always about performance, you know, as a young kid. I was like, you have to be somebody to get love, because if you're yourself, you're fucked. And yeah, it's just weird shit.
And no, for a kid, that's a lot of weight to put on yourself. I mean, that's crazy.
I had crazy things. Like I was afraid of encephalitis for like a whole year, because I watched this film called Awakenings when I was like 7 years old. And
what
like,
is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's a great film. I actually want to rewatch it. It's with Robin Williams.
Okay.
It's about these like catatonic patients in this hospital. It's a true story. And they have this brain swelling, and they treat it with some kind of speed or like methamphetamine or cocaine. I don't know. They treat it, maybe it's with a drug. They treat it with this drug, and all these people that are in like this comatose state, they come out of their comatose state and they start like having lives again. They're not vegetables. They're basically vegetables, and then they have lives. And this doctor is like, whoa, and he's like writing it all down. It's all true. And then like slowly over time, they keep upping the dosage to keep them like lucid, but they can't keep up with the disease, and the inflammation just gets worse and worse. And all these people that were like, they have lives, they start to deteriorate again. And all one by one, they start to like go back into their vegetative states. And that movie fucked me up. Because it's just weird. Like, because I was kind of smart at the kid age, I shouldn't have been able to understand that movie, really. Yeah. But I understood it, and I didn't take the right message from it, which was like, it was beautiful that these people got to get a glimpse again and reclaim their lives once more before they back into the ether. But I just was like, fuck, like that happens to people, and like you can get bit by an insect and just get encephalitis, and that's it. Like, and that was another thing. I was just anxious as a kid. I forgot where I was going with that.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, I mean, just like single digit age groups. I don't remember, like, I don't have like the best memory. I'm still pulling that together.
No,
but,
dude, that's
but like, yeah. But anyhow, so alcohol became a huge thing for me. Alcohol was really bad because I became confident. I was like, wow, I can be drunk and I don't have to care anymore, and I could actually talk to women and be myself, and get some of the suppressed feelings out. You know, I was trying to be tough because I was like, the one thing that I was going to do is like, after a while, I was like, you know what? At least they can't make me cry, or they can't make me do like, you know, whatever, God or whatever, the universe. I'm like, I'm just going to fucking, at least I'm going to have this over my conditions. I'm just going to be like, I'm not going to, you can't make me upset anymore.
Okay.
So, but I was like stifling down some anger and stuff for that, you know, trying to have it together all the time. And so it became like this ego I was kind of building, you know, of just like, I was confident and all this, but I realized that like once you get the confidence from the drugs, it's really dicey after that, you know, because now you're stunting your emotional growth, I think. And then what I've had to do since I've like, and I'm not saying that I have anything against drugs. I think a lot of it served me. Like I'm saying, like at least it got me out of my head once, and it got me into like knowing that this state was possible for me was like a huge part of my journey to becoming, all right, where I am now. But
beautiful.
But I needed to get through it in some rough ways. Like I became kind of a shitty, you know, like you said, you're like, I was a lazy person, and it's like I was definitely unconscious and like willingly ignoring certain things about my life in a certain way, and I was trying to fill it with alcohol and sex and drugs, and you know there was like porn in the household too early in my life. You know, my dad had a subscription to Playboy and shit, and I found that shit way too early. So then I had like this fascination with women, like that was unhealthy, I think, long term. And there's like just a whole bunch of things where I was just like, you know, now unpacking them, I'm like, oh, I can see how that kind of fucked me up for a little bit.
Yeah, man. But like we don't realize the things that take effect in our lives that we don't even realize are taking effect until sometimes way later, and we're like, whoa, like, you know, I can't believe I felt that way at that age here, and now I'm reflecting on it and want to make a change here. But the important part is that you did, you know, you notice those things and can actually push forward with them. A lot of people, I mean, it's hard for people too, man. A lot of people can't.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. I feel bad for the people that can't, and I hope that they do in time kind of start. And I think parkour may have been your dude. That sounds like parkour was your gateway.
Oh yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, because parkour got me out of the drugs.
Really?
In a way, so like it got me into certain things, but that, you know, it's all, but like also it's like, it got me out of alcohol. Alcohol served for a very long time, and I was very much enjoying, and that's not to like say that I didn't have great times. I had a lot of fun throughout all those years. I had a lot of fun partying, and I'm not saying I won't ever do it again. Yeah. You know, but I learned a lot from experimenting with all kinds of drugs, including alcohol. But when parkour came into my life, I finally felt like, you know, this is one of the beautiful things about the parkour community, or any community that's young and that kind of like doesn't have that judgmental feel that, you know, you feel from society. And also I was finally emerging into my own, whatever. I came into a place where I was like, I can feel like I can kind of be myself finally, or at least I don't have any pressures. I was out of college. I didn't have to like, I was independent. I didn't have any responsibility to my parents to like be a certain way, you know, or, you know, I felt like independent at 18 or whatever, even though after expression. Yeah. So that I got to like really define and experiment and be like where I wanted to be, and just be what I wanted, you know. And that's like, that was so valuable to me for parkour, to give me that space to be like, people are just going to let me kind of do my thing here. This is great. And that gave me a reason to not drink, because I was like, I really was getting so much benefit and like so much happiness, and a little bit of the validation and filling the hole in the stuff and the intention that I didn't get from my parents or whatever. Also came from parkour as I was getting into it, you know? And so I was still feeding an addictive habit, but at least it was like making me really conscious about my diet and training habits and my body, and becoming like way better. It was a better addictive habit than alcohol. And there was all these other great benefits.
Nice. Oh, I've seen you got the shreds. I know.
and then, you know, And then I found weed, and I got a little bit of an unhealthy relationship with that through parkour because it's very prevalent in the community, and there's nothing wrong with weed. But I used it and abused it again. It'll teach you things, and then you have to be careful. I want to be careful, at least, where I'm not learning anything anymore. I have to drop it. I have to drop that from my life. You know, if it's not getting me information that I need or wisdom that I need, it's got to go. And
so you don't, or
I'm not against it, and I'm not. Right now I'm learning way more from sobriety than I would learn through drugs and alcohol.
That's
and
beautiful, man.
Once I learn more from experimenting again, I'll start experimenting again. But for me, it's like I've spent so much time out of like a long extended stream of sober consciousness that like the longer I keep this going right now, the more I'm interested in it. And that's just like where I'm at. But that's not to say that like anyone, you know, no judgment if that's what you're doing. I would say that I don't recommend it for people that feel like they're filling a hole. If they're trying to like gain confidence that they didn't have, you're gonna face that battle when you get to the end of the road, or you're just going to be stuck always needing alcohol or drugs to make you feel the way you want to feel, which that's up to you. Just be conscious of that choice.
Yeah.
But
no, I definitely I was heavy on the smoking weed game too, and that's something I dropped for the very same reason. I was like, okay, this is not benefiting me. I'm overeating all the time. I'm, you know, I did a couple descents while I was high, and that did not feel good. And that was probably and I'm admitting this out loud. That sounds horrible now that I'm saying it, but yeah, don't ever. And yeah, so after that, processing later, I was like, okay, this needs to stop. I'm not, the positivity that's coming from it is little to none. And everything that I'm doing while on it is awesome. So I need to just focus on those awesome things and just kind of let it go for a while. But I'm not against it. And anyone who does do it, awesome. Have a good time. Be safe.
Yeah. No, I love getting high with people in the right setting in the right time. I mean, I don't think that'll go away, but I just, I got bigger fish to fry right now than that. But,
so what Brandon do, or keep going. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, what is Brandon doing now? What do you do? What is your day like? What is,
right now I'm in quarantine. So this is my day. I'm like really happy to be back into getting this podcast reignited because we're all on this path. Like, I think we're all getting through these certain like things that you talked about already. And, in some ways I look to people like you that are, I think in some ways further along this path, and that can give me some guidance, because of the things you've gone through. I think we can all help each other get the guidance, and
Absolutely.
And I think for me, it's just like I had to take a lot of stillness. I had to take a breath from parkour. Like you took that giant 2-year break or whatever it was. I needed some space from these things. Like, again, because parkour was an addictive habit for me in a way. I could see that. I could see that I was using it to distract myself from the truth of where I was feeling. So for me, these days, I'm working at a biological medicine center here in Denver, and I'm learning a lot about the human system, basically, which again, like, I think this has been I'm still self-discovering a lot, that's where I'm at. And I'm really passionate about just like, I'm realizing like who I am a little bit more concretely and clear with more clarity than I used to. But I've had to again, I see it as I'm having to undo a lot of the unconscious decisions still, and I think that's just where I'm at. And I don't resent it. But for you, you had this one moment, it sounds like, at the top of the parking garage, and it was a little bit more of like there's the turn. For me, I'm not saying that I'm going to land with the Bible. I'm just saying I know that there's things I'm like, all right, I'm basically worked through it, but I'm still very curious about where I'm going to take this mission. I'm still honing in that mission, and I think this platform is like ultimately for me to help people like you have a voice or bigger voice or amplify your voice. You already have one, and I really like just talking to people. I'm just realizing that I enjoy doing this. It was just like parkour. Like I started to think I had to do it. I have to put out certain episodes. I have to challenge. I have to push myself. But now I'm coming at it just like, cause I want to, and I just enjoy it. And I'm like, I could just talk to the people I want to talk to, have some fun.
That's
share.
how you know it's right.
Huh?
That's how you know it's right.
Exactly.
What you should do. It should always feel like the first time you got into parkour. You know, like that's a, you know, to me that's a beautiful thing. Like to look at is parkour happens. Like I love what you said earlier, right? Like you said, whenever parkour came into my life. You said that so nonchalantly, but that's like, I think that's the most important thing that has been said in this whole podcast. You're just like, that's a part, you know, but no, seriously though, it literally walked into your life. You turned around and it was like, hey, what's up, man? I'm about to take care of you for a while. Let's start learning together.
Yeah.
And, you know, the podcast seems to have re-entered your life in that manner. And I think that's the healthiest relationship you can have with it, rather than being like, I need to get this person on, this person on, this person on. You're like, no, I'm going to look online. I'm going to reach out to someone I feel like talking to. It's going to be a beautiful time. Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. It's really great. Yeah, I've kind of like reopened my world back up. And I realized that like for me, doing the roof gap at Nordy was scary, but I was scared of so much bigger shit in my world than falling to my death in an accident in parkour. You know, I was scared of being seen and talking about, you know, pissing the bed as a little kid when I was growing up. And I was scared of, you know, just even having this conversation with you know, potential people watching. You know, it's certain things like I'm still trying to follow my fears and conquer them. And I just realized like, oh, I was afraid of being sober for months at a time, apparently, because, you know, that's my hard work to do. And I'm like all about just growing and trying to figure out where this thing is taking me next. So I love that it doesn't have to be about making it happen. You know, it's just like I'm really enjoying and it's surprising, you know, this COVID thing. It's like it brought it out of me. I think that's one of the gifts about the whole quarantine or whatever, the idea of just like, it's like, all right, we all get to like kind of feel what's more important to us right now and the fact that I want to do this, it just like makes it even more obvious to me. Like, this is what I like to do. I don't I don't have to understand it yet. I will, but this is what I want to do with my time.
And that, dude, that's so special. Like, you know, to reflect on something about like my dad was, I felt a heavy responsibility to do descents whenever I came home or not even just descents, but put my life on, like push myself to its maximal potential. And in this case with heights, and pushing my body in that direction, because with ALS, you lose like all the muscle in your body. Like Stephen Hawking said the same thing. So, you know, getting to see my dad, like, not be able to perform, I felt this heavy weight on my shoulders to perform as hard as possible, and in the nicest way possible. Whenever I did discover my belief in God and my faith, I was able to actually let that go, which is very relieving. Like every day felt like if I didn't push myself very, very hard, or do a higher descent, I was almost letting him down in a sense. And now it's that's just not existent anymore. You know, like finding myself, letting things come into my life rather than just force, and putting a huge meaning on it all. Now it's just a beautiful thing that I do whenever my heart's feeling it. And then, you know, I figured out through doing descents too, I love filming. Filming's fun. I didn't like filming stuff before. It was just for the Instagram angle, but yeah, it was all about that angle. But man, it all gets to a good place. And I do, I have a couple more questions for you if you're cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep it going, dude. I'm having a blast here.
Cool, man. Okay, so who is your favorite 3 top parkour athletes? Like, they don't have to be the best. They don't have to be the best now. Just top 3 that you'll never forget.
Oh,
Special
man.
place.
Top 3 parkour athletes. Oh my God, dude. I don't know who. I'm just gonna go off the top.
Yeah.
With this kind of question, I mean, I can come back at you with a better refined list maybe one day, but I'm gonna go with Dylan's never gonna be. You know, I'm going with the ones that are kind of personal to me. Awesome. Dylan's gonna be the in that list because, you know, I just see him as a great teacher and mentor, and walker of this interesting, you know, spiritual path in some ways, and trying to bring bigger perspective to my life. But then Kai comes to mind. I mean, I don't know why, but I love Kai. You know, shout out Kai, the boy. Just because I like to think of him as like one of the few people that I can really relate to. He's the same age as me, and he's I just know that when he's out there doing things, I just know like there's a brother outside it, like out in the world that is kind of this British mirror of brother that I have out here in America, you know, and it just helps me just get reminded of who's out there in the world and how we're all kind of going through the same things. But you know, he's just doing so much stuff too with his side projects. I don't know. I just really like how he approaches life, and he's very conscious and very matter of fact. But I think he's very just admirable in the way he carries himself.
Yeah, beautiful dude. Yeah.
When he provides, you know, that for his community, which is really cool too. I think he's helped a lot of people figure some certain things out. And the last but not least,
here we go.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'll go David Bell, bro. I mean, cause he was an OG, you know, I don't know. I think like, I don't like to think about these things. I like to just think about, you know, I like to think about everyone playing their own equal and an amazing role, not just in parkour, but in the world. Cause you know, your story and what you've shared with me on this podcast already today just reminds me just like how much bigger someone's life is than the world of parkour. Yeah. And like the things that they've gone through that got them interested in parkour and that influenced their training style are so much more interesting to me than just the singular moves they end up doing, you know, or inventing, or you know, there can be really, really powerful innovators in the sport like Pasha, and I know his story is amazing because you don't come from Latvia, probably from nothing, and end up doing flips on the Santa Monica, you know, gym fitness, and like becoming like the world's first million-digit, you know, followed Instagram parkour athlete. But I don't know his story. So for me, I'm always just like, I just want to hear the next story for all these guys and girls out here.
That's amazing. Yeah, it is, dude. I think it takes some time to figure that out. I think everyone kind of starts seeing people's stories as the important part, and the training is the connecting part. It's you're at a gym and you're like, oh, you did that? Okay, I want to hit this challenge with you. Then at the end, whenever you're all eating at night or talking at night or smoking at night, that happens at gyms a lot. You start connecting with that person and laughing with them and realizing, man, like, no wonder we're all coming together. We're all pretty similar, and have, you know, I find that a lot of parkour athletes have a heavy story, and I've done quite a few sports growing up, and a lot of sports that I notice are very camaraderie based. You know, you learn and you grow with someone, but parkour is such a heavy, like, everyone's an artist. Like, everybody is an artist in the parkour community. Like, everyone I've met, there's something that, even if they don't know they're an artist, they talk like they're an artist. They you know, they talk as if they know exactly why they're at where they're at. And that's just a thing to me. Yeah, and to me, that's a beautiful thing. Like, I can't. A lot of people, I'm sure you get asked, like, oh, how'd you get into parkour? And to me, I find that you always hear the same things, like, oh, I got into like heavy jumps, or I got into wanting to jump across things and push my fears and that. But I think you're right. The story is what guided us to want to push our fears, and that's really important. Yeah. Or free. Yeah. Cause we all like felt constricted, I feel like. Yeah.
And we all were like seeking a certain amount of control and a certain amount of freedom in our lives. Or not all of us, but a lot of us.
Wow, yeah, that's
you know,
beautiful.
And that's one of the reasons why we push it that far. Like you said, it's like you gain so much more sense of control of your own existence and life and empowerment by doing something that no one else would want to do, but you are choosing to do because you know that it's possible and you know you can get yourself there. That shit is is super important, you know, and it certainly got me, again, like past a certain stage of my life that I needed help, you know, I needed something to get me out of it, you know. And now, you know, now I'm just so pumped because I'm like, okay, what happens when you don't need it, but you still are doing it? You know, where does that go? And a lot of people, that's where they start with parkour. So, you know, that's a beautiful thing for them too. And some people, you know, everyone's journey is so unique, but yeah, I love that training is, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what's still like, and we'll see with parkour and these athletes that have this artistry. It's so true. You know, there's certain amounts of artistry that's just like people are looking to express themselves. And
well, parkour is like, think about, you know, to double down on what you said, like parkour walked into your life. That means that there's a physical realization of parkour. Like it's not this, like, it's not a book that you read, like it has a life of its own. So it's always nice because, and I think that's the beautiful thing about the community is there's always someone coming in. Like I remember 2016 at the International, like Nate Weston made his debut and he did it with style. I don't mean like the style comp. He did it with flair. Beautiful. And that was like parkour. That was like a realization. I remember everyone there that night, like they couldn't handle what was happening. There was like a sunset. It was a beautiful sunset that we were all watching. And at the end, it won, and it was just, I just, and I don't even know if he recognizes that, but it was a beautiful realization for everybody that night. Or whenever Nahulu took DK to a sudden death. Like how? Like that was beautiful. And shout out to Nahulu. He's the man. I love that kid.
Oh yeah. He really is the man, dude. Yeah. It's fun that you bring. Yeah, those nights are so crazy because, like you said, like they're so beautiful. And like now, even looking back on it, it's like that's why I've chosen to take a different approach to my life, is because I am so much more aware, I think, of what's happening around me when I start participating in that way. And I'm so happy to be not forcing it, you know, and trying to make my own vision happen in a certain perfect way when it's already going to be perfect. But anyhow.
Do you think you'll compete again with your new mindset, or do you think?
No, I don't think like, no. I mean, it's not an avenue that I'm like interested in so much anymore. We'll see. But, you know, I feel like I chose back in 2015. I was like, all right, this is really hard on your body. I like doing things that are hard on my body, but I don't like doing them for a medal anymore or for even the experience of being in a competition. I'm like, I've experienced this enough. And that's why I'd rather apply myself with, you know, that's, you know, I was like, I want to make videos. I want to make Merm a thing. You know, I wanted to make that brand happen. And so
Merm. What was Merm? That's a clothing brand that you and Dylan made, right?
And Knox.
And Knox.
Yeah.
Who thought of that?
It was collaborative kind of effort. It was all three of us.
I've seen the shorts around.
The shorts are legendary. One day I get a lot of requests still to bring those back. We'll see what happens.
What happened there? Why did Merm stop? What is the?
I think that there is just certain, like, again, there's just certain things to this world that you just don't have control over, and to say that it stopped is also, I don't know if that's accurate, but it is like, it's never going to be what it was. It's kind of like this COVID thing. It's like, all right, some things changed, some things that we didn't anticipate and things that we don't like have control over. They changed the course of our lives, and they're not really ever going to be the same. And it's okay for me to, you know, I shouldn't really want that. For a while I was trying to hold on to it. For a while I was like, I want to make it be what it was, but it was just not that way. And I would just say that, like, Knox, Dylan, and myself had this beautiful era, and our friendships remain intact, and that's the most important thing.
Awesome.
The brand, you know, I don't know if it'll ever have any thing,
Yeah.
but like I didn't want to continue on with it not making sense. You know, our lives all seem to be going in different directions, but you know, whatever. It's all good. Like
I didn't mean to say stop.
No.
I know probably very.
It did stop. I mean, I burned my merm shorts at Burning Man because that was like something I needed to do, like to get over certain things. You know, I was just like, all right, I need to let this go. Like I did some spiritual practices in that regard with the whole merm thing.
That's beautiful. Dude, wow. I would have never known that. That's awesome.
Wow. I mean, again, drugs or not, whatever, like Burning Man and that thing, like that was another experience that was pretty powerful for me and transformative. And that kind of also brought me back into touch with who I want to be and where I want to take my life. And it's kind of like why I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing now. But
yeah. And I'd love to hear more about the merm stuff too in the future when we hang, because I missed that whole era. I found you guys shortly after. I missed a lot of your guys's seemed like the highlight in the parkour community. At least I'd always heard about you guys, and then I found all these videos, and I was like, whoa! Like these guys were pushing. Like I'm about 40% of the way there physically of what they're doing, and they were doing it 3 years ago, and I was like, what? Like how did I not see this?
That's the beauty of the game. It's also the tragedy of the game, but it's also the beautiful thing is just like it's so impermanent, and that's why it's so beautiful, like to just kind of be like, you know what, it was what it was. And it's so cool that it happened at all. You know, it's just so amazing that it happened at all, and that we were able to keep it together for as long as we did, because it can be so easy for it to disappear even without ever getting started. And that's why it's even more amazing to see other teams that are just still like for it to be still happening 10 years later for Store is just like, wow, how incredible is that? Because those guys have such a tight bond, you know? Yeah. And
no, it's crazy, man. Like with the Spyglass stuff, the goal between Jared and I has always been passion project for 10 years. Like we're 7, we always say 7 to 10 years. Like just come out with cool stuff, present parkour in a way that we think looks really cool. Don't expect to make a living off of it, and just it's more of a filter, like a way to express ourselves. And it gives us free clothing to wear.
Yeah, dude, so that's what's cool. Up, right? It's kind of nice. It feels good.
Always throwing on that shirt, and it's actually the Spyglass came from a. Have you ever seen a series of unfortunate events?
I don't think I have. But
these 3 kids, their parents pass away, and their house burns down. And then they're orphans, and they have to go and live with all these different relatives, and they have this like great uncle that's like trying to kill them to get the fortune that their parents had before.
Whoa.
And the symbol in that, not the symbol, but one of the like items in that, there's a secret society in it, and the item that they use to hold saying that they're in it is a spyglass. So that's kind of, yeah. So that's where that came from.
That's tight.
Yeah, just keeping it simple. Yeah,
that is tight, dude. Yeah, no, I love that. If that's what you, yeah, dude, I love the origin stories of these things. If you were asking more specifically for the origins for like Myrmidons were these ancient Greek warriors that were like, you know, you've heard of the legend of Achilles?
Yeah.
They were like Achilles is the leader of the Myrmidon, and like all of his like warriors are the Myrmidons. And and I think I don't know if he's a one or not, but he's like the leader of the Myrmidons, and they were like the most elite warriors of their time, and they were kind of like mercenaries. They weren't really allegiant to anyone except the leader in Achilles. So they weren't allegiant to any nation, and we just like the story of that, and we like that, you know, Myrmidon, Myrm actually, it means like, I think it means like a really shitty translation is like ant-men, or like men of, I don't know, like men made from ants, I think is like the legend goes, is like they, like whatever, Zeus or somebody like made the Myrmidons out of ants, because ants by like strength to weight ratio are just crazy strong. Yeah. And so,
man, I could have just Googled Myrmidon and found some stuff. That's crazy.
You could have. I mean, that's pretty much what we did.
Wow.
but But yeah, no, it's really cool, like to take on a little bit of an alter ego and a persona and build a team like that and build some brotherhood around it.
Did you feel could you feel the power whenever you were wearing one of those shirts though, because of how much time went into, like, whenever you were sending jumps, did you feel the power of what you were wearing?
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's like, yeah, like that was like such a crazy, amazing time, and it's like I almost don't appreciate it enough, or didn't at the time, because you don't realize how rare that is until sometimes it's gone away, you know?
Yeah.
Which is, again, that's the gift of it going away, is at least now I know how amazing that was. But it's yeah, dude. Like I framed my Merm shirt here, and I'm keeping other things like pristine, because I'm just like, I don't ever want to like trash it anymore. But it's dude, that stuff. There's certain energy when you're building something that you really believe in. I was like 100% so focused and just energized by the whole idea of that brand and what we were doing, that I still look at some of the shit I did during that time and I'm like, dude, how did I put all that together? How did I like stay up all night with Knox sewing tags on shirts? Like with our, like we learned how to sew just because we were like, we got to get these tags on. Like, and that's the amazing part, is like, that was the shit. That's the shit that I really remember. And that's the stuff that I really love, is like the miserable moments where we're like, oh, my thumbs are exhausted. My thumbs hurt from pinning tags on shirts. But that's like one of my favorite memories. And like, some of that, like some of the anger and stuff, like we filmed that documentary. I don't know if you saw on our channel, the What Happened documentary.
Yeah, What Happened.
And it's like, that was
right?
agony to complete, because it was such a big project. At times I was just like, fuck this. But like, you know what I mean? Like, oh man, like I'd never really fought. Like me and Dylan fought a few times on that tour. Like I'm not a very conflict oriented person, but like, we got in some fights and shit, and like we got some like, you know, test our relationships in certain new ways. But that's the shit that like ultimately brings you closer together, and just like ultimately was so worth it, was that challenge. And so, but dude, yeah, it's just, and that's like that's why I'm so happy to kind of be on the other side of that, know how rare it is, have the greater perspective, because as I'm getting back into the podcast and other things in my life, I can just appreciate it and live it now with more gratitude and more just like realizing like how special it is when I have those feelings again, and just like really, really enjoying them. Whereas before, go ahead.
Oh no, I think what's so special about that too, like I don't hear this talked about as much, but it's really special in my heart, is, and not that I want to separate the world or anything, but I always look at the U.S. parkour community. I always do that. And so I think that's really special that you guys had that in the U.S., specifically Colorado. That's also crazy. Like, how did it all line up to that? And you know, I've been told before by a couple of friends, maybe don't separate it like that, but you know, I'm saying it out loud. There's something, I'm very fond of the U.S. parkour community. It's like a little baby, and like everything that's happening, I'm very fortunate to be able to come up in this time and see all those things just kind of happening. So whenever I did find your guys' stuff, I went back and spammed everything, because I was like, man, like it's like a history book. Like if you get on YouTube and you look up certain things, like you know, even the old Apex like show reel. Oh yeah. Where all y'all, you weren't in that, were you? That was like
before. That was a year before I was on the team. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So like I remember that, and then I remember seeing all the Merm stuff too. Definitely the 2014 Dylan Baker video. That was a very interesting one that's just stuck in my head. Max Henry videos. You know, those are very special to me too. Yeah, you guys and Max Henry, man, and Nick Ortiz, the things that he was uploading in 2017, 2018 on YouTube, stuff like that. Those are the things that stick with me for sure. I love watching the videos in the UK. I love watching Andy Wool with Ashigaro and all that. But there's something about the U.S. parkour community that is really special to me. It's, even if things don't blow up, it's like, oh, like I'll be able to be a part of that as it's passing through.
I get you. I get you 100%. Yeah, dude. Like, yeah, U.S. parkour like does have its own, like, ultimately, yeah, we're all in it together literally right now. That's the big phrase. But it's also just like, you can only represent a certain amount, or you are representing sometimes a certain locality or regionality or you're getting to participate in like, what does it look like here, in your local community or whatever your community is. And the architecture is different and everything is different about it. The culture is different. And, and that's true to any sport. Like I love those. I'm fascinated with it in parkour. I'm fascinated with it in boxing and MMA and everything else because the U.S. is so strange in that it has so much shit happening all at once that no one cares about anything. And it's really hard for you to build momentum in this country for anything, whereas a fighter in the UK, and I'm not saying it's easier. I'm just saying that a fighter in the UK, like a Conor McGregor or a Michael Bisping or Anthony Joshua, or like some of these people that are really famous fighters, because I love to look to fighters because I think they're probably, at least maybe as equal or probably harder than parkour athletes, in terms of like the amounts. I would say that like parkour athletes are of the same mindset as a martial artist. A lot of us, especially the people that push to the very limit, or that really pioneer things. But I think that, we can look to our brothers in combat sports as like examples of like where and how hard can any of us push it, and sisters in combat sports. Like some of the women in MMA are like most inspiring. But I was gonna say is like a lot of those nations really get behind their athletes. In certain sports, or they really become fans of like certain things. And in the United States, there's just, the world's already oversaturated. But I know that in the United States, even though there's the most opportunity to make something original and make something like, your life here, people come from all over, Anthony Joshua and Conor McGregor and a lot of these people, they come to America often to make their fortune or make their name, or because there's a lot of opportunity here, but they get the backing of their nation, they get the backing of their community, and there's something about the way the U.S. is laid out and the culture here and how much of a melting pot it is that it really is harder to gain traction sometimes. And that's one of the reasons why it is so amazing and so beautiful when you can find, a certain bits of culture that come through that have staying power and that last, and why I have so much respect for any of the facilities or athletes that have been in the game for a very long time in the United States, because it's hard anywhere, but it's hard here too. Very hard.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And also with just industry based, right? So like with my girlfriend, she's a rock climber. And she does a lot of rock climbing. She every day, that's become like her life. And she's really good at it. And she got me looking into more rock climbers. And so it's funny with parkour, right? Like you just said, you get so into fighting. And I heard you in the podcast talk about fighting. Like I know you're in.
I love me some fights, baby. Yo, they're going to put on UFC 248 or 249, whatever, and this Saturday or next Saturday.
Are you serious?
They're putting it on during COVID. Because that's the fighter mentality. And I actually respect it, even though I know it's maybe not we don't need to go into that. But anyhow, what you were saying
Yeah, she got me into looking into climbers and stuff like that. Just by her climbing, it got me naturally interested. And so definitely a huge fan of the film Free Solo. I'm sure you've seen that.
Dude,
That was a big motivation to keep pushing descents and coining them as projects instead and not rushing them, because I was like, I also don't want to die. So it's a good time. Good time, and to take a few months if I need to. And on a side note, though, who do you think is going to win with your experience of watching fights?
Between who and who?
Khabib and Tony.
Well, that fight's off. Actually, Tony's going to fight Justin Gaethje now.
What?
Yeah, because Khabib can't leave Russia because of COVID, and so basically they have to throw it with domestic fighters. It's still an amazing card. Look into it, but I think the boogeyman, Tony Ferguson, El Kukui, will take the fight and TKO Justin Gaethje. Although Justin is, it's going to be chaos. That'll be a really cool fight. But if dude, the Tony Khabib fight. I mean, I don't know how well you follow it, but this fight has been scheduled 5 times and canceled 5 times over the last 60 years or whatever.
Really?
It's like cursed. Like every time it gets scheduled, someone misses weight or someone gets injured, and it's like the most anticipated fight in the history, not just of the lightweight division, but maybe the entirety of the UFC. Probably. Like, it's just so highly anticipated. Khabib's completely undefeated. Tony's been undefeated for so long that it might as well just be like he's undefeated forever. They're both like so incredible, and we're just like, you want it to happen so much this year because it needs to, while they're still both in their prime. Yeah. Because that's another thing that actually I think is really important and interesting about parkour, and that we share with the martial artists, is that we have a window to compete in. And not just compete, but just contribute to the athletic or peak performance of our lives, you know. And we don't know what that window even is yet with parkour. We don't even have it like narrowed down because it's so broad too. Like I've got my eye on a challenge that, speaking of free solo, that I won't really talk too much about, but I have mentioned, like climbing is like a thing that we can still do way later in life, and that's part of parkour. And like, there's a big building here in Denver that I'm like, it's possible to climb. I already know I can do it. It's a matter of doing the process and seeing if it wants to be, if it's accessible to me,
Okay.
But like,
I'm excited to see that.
But just that window, that short window, it's like, I think that's really crazy that, we only have a certain amount of time to really push ourselves. And we can extend that through really sustainable training, and we can extend that through really just changing the way we contribute to be more creative and less like power foot based. But,
I haven't seen much fight. You'll find the special, but I don't watch a lot of fighting. I've seen like the big fights, like the Conor fights or Khabib with Conor, stuff like that, Mayweather and Conor. I've seen those, but like, you seem so like, the details. Like, I just know the big picture. Yeah. Like, something with Descents though that was really cool was sorry,
I didn't even answer your question, but I will say that I think it's impossible to know. I would say like that one is so up in the air. That's why it's so highly anticipated. Like it'd be easy to make the argument that Khabib just holds him down the whole time. I think Tony though. I would put my money on Tony just because I like him as like a funner bet, and I think because he's so weird and unorthodox, I like somebody who has like, you don't know how he's gonna win exactly. He could win a number of ways, but. He'd probably slice him up with elbows or whatever and get a TKO with a cut. But anyhow, I just like it.
I've seen a couple of his fights, and he reminds me of a parkour athlete out of any fighter. Like, I've seen him do weird rolls to get out of certain situations.
He's such a strange person. And like,
it's amazing. You know what's going to happen. Yeah. He puts you on the ground and he puts his weight on you, and you have to hold his weight. And then once you're tired, he makes you tired. I've seen that in every fight. I've seen one though. I saw a fight where he like elbowed a guy's face. Yeah. For so long, and they had to pull him off of him. I was like, how many elbows is he going to get to this guy's face before they pull him?
He can really develop his striking style because he's so miles ahead in grappling. He probably doesn't have to focus on it that much, even though it is his number one weapon. So you never know. That's one of the reasons why he landed that amazing shot against Conor, is because he's just not threatened at all by anyone else's grappling. But anyhow, we don't need to talk about, the
UFC. Yeah.
What were you going to say about the Descent?
Oh, yeah. So I found this book. My best friend, Juan, he gave me this book called The Warrior Within by John Little. And John Little gathered all of Bruce Lee's writings through his whole life and put it into this big book. And there was so much writing that he was able to separate into chapters. Like, Bruce Lee practically wrote a book covering different topics that he found important, whether it was love, ego, defeating adversity. So I remember part 6, chapter 2 was defeating adversity. And I would listen to it on repeat while I was training Descents from the second to first level. And it was so important. Bruce Lee would talk. He just had such a fighter mindset towards everything, and how to bend and how to, treat yourself like a willow tree instead of like a pine, and be able to handle the snowfall. And a big thing we talked about was ridding your ego completely and being able to approach something with such a calm mindset And something that I have a hard time with is my heart rate gets so high if something scares me. And it's like a cliche thing. Like some people, they're like, oh, I'm so scared, but their body is actually reacting just fine. I actually get sweaty, which is really bad for descents. I get heart rate goes up. I feel horrible if I'm too scared. And so that book always calmed me down, just listening to his words and how he was able to process certain things whenever he was a kid. Really cool book. Check that out.
Warrior Within. Hell yeah. I'm gonna write that down. Yeah. I'm like that.
I'll send it to you. Yeah, for sure. Another athlete that I was going to bring up too that really changed my training was Max Henry. Yeah, that dude changed my training heavy back in the day. I looked at parkour in such a I looked at it in a natural way of like, okay, you hit flips. I was heavy into acro when I first started. So I did I would do corks, like tumbling passes, front flips, wall flips. I was always into that whole line style based of training. And I met Max in New York, and that changed completely. I almost completely let go of acro.
Wow.
Because I saw him doing jumps, and I was like, that's really cool. I want to be able to jump really far. Yeah, for sure. And I've only gotten to train with him a handful of times, but yeah, he's a really special part of the parkour community, at least to, I think, us older guys, for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah, he changed my training too in so many ways, and I'm so glad that he moved out here. I'm fucking so lucky. I'm so lucky Max moved out here. He's amazing to train with. He never, when I remember when I first met Max, I think I was also in New York. He came out here a few times and visited, but I wasn't really like, I was still like whatever in my own bubble in some ways. But I remember when I met him in New York, I was just blown away about how good, because we talked about way earlier about someone who had to figure it out. Yes. Really had to figure it out. Max is that person. He's not gifted like you would think he is. And I'm not trying to, that's not an insult. That is actually the biggest praise you could ever give him, because I've seen videos of him when he was younger training, and I've seen, and he needs to post that if he hasn't already. I think he probably has, but there's some fucking hilarious footage of him out there. But also just like seeing what effort went into like him and the way he figured things out and became so sustainable. It's like he is so incredible and disciplined in the way he comes to training. It blew my fucking mind, because I remember training with him. I was like, if I was as strong and good at parkour as that person, I would be doing some next level shit. Like I was like, I can't do that because I can't jump that far because I'm not disciplined enough to be that conditioned and strong, and I don't drill things enough to have the technique that he has. But like I remember seeing his training, and I was like, if I could do what he could do, I would do so much shit that I can't do. But I was like willing to. I was more sendy, I was more sendy back then than I, and he really taught me, and it still teaches me how to really appreciate different levels of discipline. And you do that as well with your journey, and Nick as well with his, and lots of people. But yeah, Max is such a fucking legend, because he is so pure in his approach, and you need to check out his book. We've had him a few times on the podcast, so if you're listening,
I need to read the whole thing. Parkour roadmap. Heck yeah.
Yeah, he's a really special part of he's grounded the community in a certain way that it needs, and it still needs, just because of he's got that old school. He's like one of the biggest parkour nerds I know, actually, and I love him for it.
He showed up to where I live, like the town that I live in, on one of his trips, and I took him to this spot it's like an iconic spot here that we'll train at, and he hit 3 challenges that he hit it at about what seemingly looked like 70%. And at the time was my 140. It took 6 months to complete all 3 of those challenges. Yeah. And that was like actually writing out regiments to try and complete them. It was fun. I looked at it like, okay, he just came and literally dominated this spot,
dude,
in 45 minutes. And I was like, okay, I got to try and get these challenges. Those are the new challenges to get.
Those are the new ones. Yeah, man. He's such a good person to train with, because he pushes you so far with what's possible, and he does it without, like, he's never had that sense of sendiness. I feel like he's just not that person, but what he can do, it looks like he's like a sender. Well, actually it doesn't, because it's perfect almost every time, but it's just like, it's so incredible what he can do, because like to get to that level, it's like it took a lot of dedication, you know.
Yeah.
And for him, I'm sure it was fun the whole way, but for me, I just admire it because I'm just like, dude, you don't understand. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do your journey because I'm not as like I just can't. Like, it needs to be more exciting for me, so I do stupid shit more often. But you like really studied it, you know. I respect the shit out of that.
Yeah, it's like he went to parkour university.
Yeah,
we all went to the after school club. Yeah. Like,
yeah, really I went to the community college, whatever, you know.
Same. No, he did the he's very good at vocalizing too. Like, every time I have gotten to train with him, we'll be looking at a challenge and he's like, "Oh, dude, you could do that." And I'm like, "Oh, I mean, Max thinks so. Yeah, sure." Like, and we'll break it down easily. Like, and it was at night one time, and here in the Woodlands, like where I live, and there was a stride, and he was just like, "Yeah, man. I mean, just think of it like this." And it went from in my head like no to oh, absolutely yes. Kind of like with you in the Nordstrom con. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, well, I mean, my boy Nick did it. Like, I probably said, like, yeah, that's huge. And sorry for changing the topic so fast.
Yeah, you're good. We're good. We probably should get. Yeah, it's hard because we were both nerds about this shit. So
yeah,
no one's holding us to like the straight and narrow right now.
Yeah, get it all out. Yeah. No. What about the? Have you done the Whole Foods descent?
No. Actually, you know, people look to me sometimes, I think, with more descent prowess than I actually have, because I was there and I helped to like pioneer some of the moves, maybe even a little bit. You know, I was there when we first started doing the parking garage in Boulder that is really well known. And but I didn't actually. I never, and I still don't train descents or cat drops that often or that much. And partially, you know, it was because when they were becoming a thing, I was like, that's Dylan's thing. Let him have his thing. I don't really want to like, I liked doing them with him, but they were so scary. And I also really wanted to do, this was my thinking, and it still kind of is my thinking, is just what I feel good about is when I contribute something that I feel like is new to the conversation. Awesome. And I realized that I should train that, and I still want to get better at those. You know, they're a great thing to work on. But at the time, I actually decided I was going to go up instead of down, you know, that parking garage in Boulder. And that became my focus. And I got better at going up, or at least not better, but it felt like, all right, if he's going to go down, I'll try to go up, you know, because at least then I know that like I'm helping push the boundaries. You know, that's like something I've always been interested in. It's driven me.
Oh yeah, because you ascended the Pearl Street one. Mm-hmm. You did the whole thing. Wow, that's creepy. That's a creepy thing to do.
Yeah, it is creepy, but it's also I don't know. I think each one of us has our own thing, and I still look at the Whole Foods one, and I'm less inspired to do things sometimes when people have made a thing. I'd rather do one that's new. That's my tendency, but I can see a lot of value in me trying to work that out, because one, it kind of detaches me from this idea of like, oh, I'm doing this new thing. Like, you know, I don't need to have a new thing. It's and I think it's a really, really cool. And in fact, the Whole Foods one is maybe my favorite of all of them, because each one is different. Yeah, a lot of cat drop descents. It's like you're doing this, and like that's one of the things that's so cool about it, is that you do the first one, and then maybe as you're hitting the second one, you're like in a rhythm, and then all you have to do is kind of like ride that wave. You're like boom, 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 boom. Like your brain kind of just goes, we're in this zone, we're doing this. It's the same move over and over again. But the Whole Foods one, it's slightly different at each level, and so it's just that much more jarring to the consciousness, I think, and that much more intense, and that's why I think it's such a cool one to do. I've done it from just the bottom level, but I never took it any higher than that, because I just didn't want to. Ultimately, I still look at it. I still look at it though, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll get back into those. But for a while, I was just kind of, descents aren't as much my thing as a lot of people think they are.
Well, whatever you end up getting into, I'm up to see your movement is very, it's clean. Everything you do is very smooth, and you look very bouncy whenever you do it too. Like you look like you're floating, so that's a good vibe.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that. No, I like that. They're also not, you know, Marco James. You know who Marco James is?
Yeah. I've seen him.
He did that one, and that was pretty wild and inspiring, because one of the reasons I didn't like it is I need to be really in good shape, I think, to want to do something like that. And it's been harder for me, you know, living independently and on my own. Like, I don't live out of my car. Maybe that's something I want to do one day. I don't think it's for me. But you know, you know, it's just life is, I'm not making excuses. So I'm not going to say anything other than my value is sometimes just not aligned enough for me to be in that good of shape. Because for me to want to take that drop, I want to be able to like deadlift 350 pounds, just because I want to just like have that confidence and the ability to absorb the drop. You know, I could do it. I know I'm in good enough shape to do it now, but there's certain things that I need in place for me to like want to do that, you know? I need the safety. I need the safeguards. I'm at 92% confidence. I need it to go to like 99.9 for me to want to do something like that. And then it'll be easy. But I also, what we talked about earlier, it's like I let those challenges come to me now. And there might be a day that I'm just wandering around Cherry Creek and I'll end up doing it because it feels good that day. And that's happy. I'm happy to just wait for that too.
It's funny because like sometimes things are projects and some things you feel so good at whenever you see, and you're like, wow, actually all my training has led up to this in the next 20 minutes. And it feels wonderful. I think that's beautiful. I think that things should only be rushed if your heart is like, oh, okay. Yeah. You know, I feel like whenever you said the Nordstrom was years, but it was that one day that was like, actually, this feels right. I hate doing a challenge that doesn't feel right. That's and I force myself to do a few and they feel horrible. Even after you're just not as satisfied, you're like, well, I'd rather go home and just sleep now and eat something. No,
I love just letting it happen. I'm just letting it happen more and more and just living in the more beautiful state of that. Because
Sorry, you and your girl both train, right? Like your girl trains too?
Yeah. I was going to actually throw it back to your question about the 3 most influential or my favorite. I have to give her a shout out, I think, partially because I just know her better than anyone. Or as well as any of these other people. And the way that she approaches training has taught me a lot, you know, being that like in tune with not just a female perspective on like life and training, but just, you know, her story and her background and where she's come from and where it's landed her, and like some of the things we've mentioned earlier has just given me some insight into just how everyone what can be like so powerful about training for so many people in so many different ways. But yeah, she's incredible. And actually I don't really like being in that position, but that's one of the reasons why I've learned a lot. In terms of just like when I just never had a girlfriend that was like doing the kinds of shit that I was doing, you know? And it's actually kind of scary, you know? It's like when I really care about, I know I love my bros and I loved Dylan and Nick and I still love those guys and all that. But when I'm watching them do their thing, it requires less of me to hold that space. Like you said, you mentioned how those people your girlfriend and Jared when you were doing that big descent, they were really good at just like no pressure and like no, you know, holding that moment for you. And for me, holding the moment for my girl is just like harder than holding a moment for my bro.
She did a huge jump the other day, right? Mm-hmm. Like across like how I've always wondered, like, so you're her boyfriend. Mm-hmm. She's about to hit this jump that's life threatening in a sense. What was your approach to being okay with that? Same thing or scarier a little bit?
My approach was number one, just not being a hypocrite. Like just recognizing that like this is the exact same thing I'm doing to my mom. I'm like making her feel uncomfortable probably because I need to do things. And recognizing that that's the same motivation in her and she needs to do and she wants to do this. And if she's going to do it, I'm going to support her and try to make it as safe and informed as possible and really show her how I train and hopefully she can learn from it, you know?
Yeah.
And,
fair enough.
But that was a hurdle for sure. You know, I don't enjoy it really. And she knows this. I enjoy it in that I like doing things together and I like pushing myself and I like growing and learning through it, you know, like I'm saying, and being able to be like, you know what? some things I used to think aren't true, you know, and realizing that, like, all right, and getting to see the perspective of somebody who really cares about you but doesn't understand the decision fully, you know.
Yeah.
Or
that's also, I bet you guys have connected on a whole new level with her being able to send, you know, and you being like, wow, she, you know, because I see a lot of relationships where, like, either the girl isn't active at all or the guy isn't active at all. So you got to witness firsthand the love of your life, you know, do a jump like that, and you being on the other side for once, and being like, wow, that's like the rush in her head. Imagine what that feels like. And then, you know, you guys get to, now it's funny, you and your girlfriend get to talk about ascend. In most relations, not that. Yeah.
No, awesome. Not at all. But yeah, it is really, that's a wild one, because that particular jump, that was a really special thing for me to do when I did it back in the day. And then to help her, like, through that and have it mean a lot of the same things to her as it meant to me. Yeah. Actually, not really a lot of the same things. That's kind of but there's a through line, but it's just like, that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, is just people experience and approach training differently. And like really opening that up. And like, even though I am more experienced, I can't necessarily offer the guidance that I want to. I need to offer the guidance that she needs. And there's a big difference there. And, you know, it's really opened my eyes as like somebody who, you know, I don't really see myself as an educator or a coach in this domain. Other than like the Star Wars version, where it's like, hey, like there's certain like there's certain like apprenticeships and stuff, and those all work out, but it's different. It's just, I don't know, that one. Yeah, it's been fascinating because it's brought some insecurities and some things to light, and like helped me get over them.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, man. And it's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, I got nothing but. She's so incredible and she's so powerful, and it's not easy for me to deal with sometimes, you know, like that's why it's so important, you know, that's why it's so cool for me to have that gift of like being able to see what it's like to be on that supportive side, you know. I think there's aspects that I probably can't comprehend at the moment because I haven't been quite there, but I guess another question in that I could ask is, were you like, yo, let's go look at this? Or was she like, hey, I want to see that? Oh, it was all her. No, I was like, I was not. Really? No, I mean, like I said, like, well, I'm always like this with everybody. Yeah. I'm not trying to get anyone to do anything, especially because of me. Like, I don't want you to do anything, especially life-changing. If it's not life-risking or whatever, then I might try to encourage you to do something, maybe. Cool. But even then, I'm pretty disinterested in influencing your journey, you know? Yeah. But I'm especially neutral and cautious about providing any kind of push or influencing somebody's journey when it comes to something like that. And that's mostly just because I don't want that from anyone else in my training. I don't want somebody telling me, and because I want to experience it for myself. And there's certain people that have a privilege to really talk to me and be in that space with me. But for the most part, I don't want encouragement or need it, or really even, you know, it's almost like, shut up, you know, like for a lot of people, it's like, I just don't want you involved. It's my thing. Yeah. And, and for her, it's like, I mean, like I did not try to get her to do anything, you know, but she wanted to do it. And so I could recognize that. And so I decided to like, just be as supportive as I could and give her the knowledge that I wanted to give her. Yeah. But yeah, no, I would have been perfectly happy if she had never, and I tell her all the time, if she never wants to do parkour, it has nothing to do with the reason I like her or love her. Like, it has nothing to do with what makes me love who she is like her skills with parkour, you know. I give a fuck.
That is awesome. And I assume that she wanted to do it. It was more me wondering, like, that's so crazy. Like, cause I imagine it's a very open area that you guys have to get up there quick.
Oh my God. It's so gnarly.
Yeah.
It's so exposed, dude. And that day it was like, 2 times we had to slink down because there was like a fire truck called. I don't know if they were called on us. Like somebody called something, and there was an ambulance that drove by, and it's just like you just feel so exposed up there, and there's traffic and there's wind, and it's just the elements, man. Like people don't understand sometimes what goes into some of these jumps, not just civilians, but even parkour athletes. We don't always know because, you know, we know, but we also know that no one can understand unless you're there. That's why you have to go look at it. You have to be in front of the jump to know what it's like. And that's why it's so important to go visit the historic spot. You're like, oh, this is what it was like, you know, or this is like, you know, this is IMAX. That's the actual distance. Holy shit. Oh, the walls are weird like this. They're painted like that. Whoa, I didn't know. Like the textures, like it's all so much a part of the challenge. That's why it's so cool to visit spots like that.
Yeah, approaching a challenge is a challenge itself sometimes, because you're like, you're on the way there, you're like, oh, I'm ready to see this thing, and then you get there and you're like, this is a lot worse than I thought it was going to be. Or this is way easier too. That happens.
What I learned about myself is like, I'm at a point now where I don't even like being up there. I don't want to do it, and I can still do it. Yeah. Like I can be in a terrible mood with the wrong shoes on and just being like, not terrible mood, but just low energy, just not feeling like I'm not in training mode.
Pretty chill.
And just I can still hop across that thing, which is crazy to me because, you know, when I first did it, it was like it took 100% of my focus, and I still focus 100% because I know I need to be safe. Yeah. But it doesn't take, and I'm going to be really careful here because it make people, you know, understand that I'm not neglectful, and I don't think anyone should do anything unsafe, but it just doesn't require as much of my capacity.
Yeah, you don't have the anxious buildup of never have done it. Doing it, or the hours and hours of practice of breaking other challenges at height too. You know, there's a lot going on there that I'm sure your amygdala
exposure is so imperative. Exposure, you know. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, man, I'm excited to get to Denver and train with you too, man. Once all this is over, I'm coming. So
hell yeah,
that's the first place I'm coming,
dude.
So I don't know what competition season is looking like this year. I'm not competing anymore either. After last year, it didn't fulfill me the way I thought it was going to. I just want to train with people and film with them and have fun. So, hopefully I get up there real soon. We can train. Be awesome.
Yes. Dude, it's been amazing talking to you, man. We've gone for 2.5 hours, so we should probably call it and save the next conversation for the next episode here. But yeah, man, it's been great talking to you, dude. It's so cool.
You too, man. You're an absolute legend. Thanks for letting me on.
You're a fucking legend as well.
Cool, man.
All right, brother. It's good to hear from you. We'll find everything you need in the episode info. Peace.
Later, bro.
Later. All right. That was it. That's the episode. Enjoy this plant that's now in the Hype Drop Studios. And thank you for appearing again, AJ. Thank you guys for listening. All the ways to support the podcast are in the description. And we appreciate everyone who contributes to that. And we'll see you on the next episode, whenever that is. Stay safe out there. Much love.